My opinion is that somehow, some way, this entire culture of celebrity posturing has unceremoniously died. The same celebrities who spent the better part of a decade screaming at really anyone who has moderately right-of-center opinions has suddenly discovered that nobody cares what they think, and that screaming actually costs them money, fans, and careers. And let's be real, the proof is everywhere. I have no idea what I'm doing with my hand right now. Please look away. In September 2024, Pharrell Williams said that he is annoyed by celebrities trying to tell others how to vote. During this interview, he said, "I'm one of them people who says, 'What the heck? Shut up, nobody asked you.'" He also called these celebrities self-righteous, which, I can't disagree there. In July 2025, comedian Jay Leno said late-night TV comedians have become too politicized and that they risk losing half the viewing audience by cozying up to one side or the other.
I read that there was an analysis done of your work on The Tonight Show for the 22 years and that your jokes were roughly equally balanced between going after Republicans and taking aim at Democrats.
Well,
did you have a strategy, or was that?
Well, it's funny to me when I got hate letters from them saying, "You and your Republican friends, well, Miss Line, I hope you and your Democratic buddies are happy," over the same joke, and I go, "Well, that's good." So that's how you get a whole audience. Now you have to be content with half the audience because you have to give your opinion. And to me, I like to think that people come to a comedy show to kind of get away from the things, the pressures of life, wherever it might be. And I love political humor, don't get me wrong, but it's just what happens is people wind up cozying too much to one side or the other.
In November 2025, Jennifer Lawrence, who was once extremely politically outspoken, routinely attacking Trump during his first term, gave an interview where she essentially said that we've learned with election after election that celebrities make no difference in who people vote for.
I don't really know if I should. I think, the first Trump administration was so...
Hybrids absolute, how the C's treating yet.
I don't know, I just started loading up the game.
A chicken with my head cut off. But as we learned...
I had a real bad headache this afternoon, so I'm
election after election,
starting up late. But I got a cup of coffee, so I should be able to
whatsoever on who people vote for.
still put in a decent amount of time on the game.
I'm just sharing my opinion on something that's going to just add fuel to a fire that's ripping the country apart.
It's almost like getting paid boatloads of money to play pretend.
Hybrids absolute, I'm loving the frigate.
No impact on the real world.
Yeah, I gotta put the 24-inch guns on it.
The reason why a bunch of these celebrities are jerks is because
I only got my 12 inches on it right now.
which is why they
But
too
if the
should
game ever
subscribe to
frickin' loads,
today's
man.
video, Beam. Alright, you are all going to come along with me while I make my
Let me get a few puffs in before I get too
Hybrids
far in.
absolute, you going with devastation cannons again.
Oh, yeah.
I'm genuinely so glad that this company keeps sponsoring my channel so I can keep preaching to you all about how good this stuff is. And once again, because I apparently talk about Dream so much in my personal life, one of my friends came over recently, took one of the Dream bags that I have to try it, and then she actually told me today how surprised she is by how well it works, which I don't know why you're surprised. I told you. So when I say that I've converted basically everybody around me, I am not joking. Dream is awesome because it tastes amazing, and there are so many flavors to choose
No,
from.
I wanted
And
to...
it's also full of great ingredients like reishi, L-theanine, magnesium, and even melatonin, or you can get melatonin-free options if you're not so keen on melatonin, so that's nice too. And for me, I really like Dream because I don't feel groggy when I wake up. So as you can see, I drink it about 45 minutes to an hour before bed, depending on how tired I already am, and I find myself just getting calmer and calmer until it's lights out. I also love that my little Dream kit came with this little foamy mixer guy here, which I use all the time and actually comes very much in handy. So if you are ready to give this awesome soup aid a try, Beam's Black Friday sale with up to 50% off for a limited time. This is Beam's biggest sale of the year and officially the best deal that I have shared on this channel. So click the link in the description or go to shopbeam.com/SydneyW. No discount code needed because all of the codes are auto-applied at checkout. The biggest recent example
I didn't bring money with me, god damn it.
Silence. In late November 2025, Sydney Sweeney was once again lambasted online because she refused to say anything at all about her controversial jeans commercial. You guys know the one that I'm talking about. Why a double entendre about a hot girl having good genes is controversial is still a mystery to me. Perhaps this culture of uggos don't like having that rubbed in their face.
Good leather,
During an interview
strong
with
steel.
GQ, the interviewer asked Sweeney about the American Evil Gene saga. She basically replied, "When I have something to say that people need to hear, they'll hear it." I don't remember the direct quote, but it was saying along those lines.
The criticism of the content, which was basically that maybe specifically in this political climate, like, white people shouldn't joke about genetic superiority. Like, that was kind of like the criticism, broadly speaking. And since you are talking about this, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to...
I think that when I want to speak about people here.
Were you surprised by the reaction?
I did a Gene ad.
Seeing people losing their minds over Sydney Sweeney wasn't terribly surprising, given how much of a fuss she kicks up any time she's mentioned. Her non-apology, her lack of groveling, obviously made these people even angrier, because that is the one thing that they want in these situations. Groveling and penance. But Jennifer Lawrence's comments and Sydney Sweeney's non-response were both really interesting in their own right, because I think that they really do signal a bit of a sea change happening in Hollywood. One where actors, actresses, studios, and everyone in between have started to realize people do not care whatsoever about
God damn it.
politics, but more specifically, their leftist politics. And more importantly, that we don't want politics in the media that we consume at all. I do not want your gender or diversity quotas. I want
Yeah, I think I have cluster periods that last a certain amount of time. I think it's actually ending. Because the headache didn't come at night. It came during the day, and it's wasn't as bad and it wasn't as long, but I'm feeling all right now. I'm a little drained, kinda. Not like I want to go to sleep. I just want to relax for a little bit, man.
Insufferable. Award speeches became less
Shit.
about acceptance of the actual award and more about proclaiming one's political opinions. This happened so much that even 2020 Ricky Gervais dedicated an entire speech of his own to calling celebrities out, accusing them of not even knowing what the real world is like.
Well, you say you're woke, but the companies you work for, I mean, unbelievable. Apple, Amazon, Disney. If ISIS started a streaming service, you'd call your agent, wouldn't you? So, if you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. So, if you win, right, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God, and fuck off, okay? So...
Movies, television shows, really all sorts of entertainment became places where ideologues could shove their political agendas, giving us insane storylines, unbelievable characters, and that's just the basic stuff. That's not even the worst of it. It also gave us a bunch of stupid dialogue like this.
Well, here's the thing, Bruce. I'm great at controlling my anger. I do it all the time. When I'm catcalled in the street, when incompetent men explain my own area of expertise to me, I do it pretty much every day, because if I don't, I will get called emotional or difficult.
Pirating, it's the best way. You gotta get out there and sink ships. And then sell what the provisions and stuff you get from them. That's how I got all mine. I got enough to buy another frigate for another character. You know what? I'm going to explore the top of the map a little more.
people routinely explain that going against the progressive grain is actually career suicide, and simply remaining apolitical was no longer an option. Neutrality itself was recast as a sort of like moral failing.
I want to
But now,
listen to
that
this. Hang
contract
on.
has been torn up. You're all okay. This one was actually. Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to the show. I saw a couple comments recently from people saying that they're a little upset that I'm not referencing the fact that we're on our Hell Gondola, but rest assured, guys, you're always on the boat. You can't get off. You're not allowed. On a completely unrelated note to anything, when I was picking this little fun screensaver for this video, it made me so sad because living in Texas, it's constantly always hot, and I just want a Christmas that looks like this. Why can't I have you? In some personal news, I am currently fostering another Irish setter right now who I'm sure I'm going to show you because he's a really cute boy. Say hello to him. Okay. Hello. I'm at a TV channel. Say, my name is Ian and I'm a boy. Last housekeeping thing before we get into this video. Today is the last day that you can get my Emerald Green Tea on my tea website at 50% off using the code WeDon'tWaste. You can still get New York breakfast for the next couple days, but this sale will be ending by the end of this week. Like I already mentioned in a couple other videos, I don't know if
Nothing, I got the 24s. I just had to go and buy the plans. Dude, I have so many resources at my base. I'm actually out looking for new resources. I mean, I'm stocked up on literally everything, with the exception of hardwood. I think I just got enough hardwood to make my frigate. But I could just fast travel and get some. But no, I got it. I just added it on. That was the first thing I did when I got into the game, was put on my 24s. I got the devastating 24s and devastating 36s on it now. Before I was just running 12s and 36s. But I got my 12s back at the base, and I got an extra set of 36s. No, I haven't. But I figured I'm kind of sailing around, just uncovering map. Look, I'm heading toward the number 5 right now. Level 5. Pound the shit out of this guy.
No, I'm not. But what I am saying is,
oh yeah.
You make a movie that is a love letter to women of color.
But right now I'm just running across little pipsqueaks.
Low chance a woman of color will have the chance to see your movie and review your movie. Oh shit.
Dad, please just shut up. Dad, personally, I'm glad that you think that you're a they them and are probably sterilizing yourself. But what is absolutely hilarious, at least in my opinion, is that somehow, some way, this entire culture of celebrity posturing has unceremoniously died. The same
Buddy!
part of a decade screaming at
no!
anyone who has
God damn it, did I miss because of you? No, I got him. Alright. But stop that. He started pulling on the cord of my mouse. Right when I was trying to shoot.
Is everywhere. I have no idea what I'm doing with my hand right
You're sabotaging me.
In September 2024, Pharrell Williams said that he is annoyed by celebrities trying to tell others how to vote. During this interview, he said, "I'm one of them people who says, what the heck? Shut up, nobody asked." He also called these celebrities self-righteous, which, I can't disagree there. In July 2024, he said late-night TV comedians had become too politicized, and that they risk losing half the viewing audience by cozying up to one side or the other.
There was an analysis done of your work on the Tonight Show for 22 years, and that your jokes were roughly equally balanced.
I named my ship Nickerless.
Did you have a strategy?
And I named it that because originally in World of Warcraft I had a blood elf hunter named Pantyless, and everybody loved that name.
And to me, I like to think that people come to a comedy show to kind of get away from the things, the pressures of life. happy. And I love political humor, don't get me wrong, but...
I think I still have a character on World of Warcraft named Pantyless. The original one, somebody reported it. I'm trying to remember. I think it was in Gul'dan was the server. Somebody reported the name and they forced me to change it, so I changed it to Scumbag. Because somebody scumbagged me. And then on a different server I made a Pantyless. I think it was one of the werewolf people. I don't remember. That was a while ago.
Like I felt like I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. But as we learned, election after election, celebrities do not make a difference whatsoever. I don't think people vote for it. And so then what am I doing? I'm just sharing my opinion on something that's going to just add fuel to a fire that's ripping the country apart.
It's almost like getting paid boatloads of money to play pretend has absolutely no impact on the real world. It's crazy. I can't help but wonder if the reason why a bunch of these celebrities are jerks is because they don't get very good sleep. Which is why they too should hear about the sponsor of today's video, Beam. Alright, you are all going to come along with me while I make my Dream Sleep Hot Chocolate in preparation for sleeping. I admit that Dream has become fully integrated in my nighttime routine, and I'm genuinely so glad that this company keeps sponsoring my channel so I can keep preaching to you all about how good this stuff is. And once again, because
I've only been using my insignias to boost the reputations as much as I need to, because I wasn't exactly sure. I have the feeling there's one more faction where I'm going to bump into, and for some reason I think they're going to have not only cool shit, but it's going to be harder to boost the reputation with them. But I figured since there's nobody really watching my stream, I would waste this time uncovering more map. Here's a group of dudes I could fuck up.
I also love that my little dream kit came with this little phone.
God damn it, why didn't I empty my ship when I was at port?
Awesome sleep aid a try, then shop Beam's Black Friday sale with up to 50% off for a limited time. This is Beam's biggest sale of the year and officially the best deal that I have shared on this channel. So click the link in the description or go to shopbeam.com/SydneyW. No discount code needed because all of the codes are auto-applied at checkout.
I've got a lot of insignias.
Example that I'm sure you have all heard of by now is important because it was more of a non-answer. It was the antithesis of political lecturing. It was just silence. In late November 2025, Sydney Sweeney was once again in Ambassador Online because she refused to say anything at all about her controversial You guys know what I'm talking about. Why is double entendre about a hot is controversial is still illegal. Perhaps this culture of others don't like having that rubbed in their face. During an interview with GQ,
as you can tell by my map, I don't explore much.
The criticism of the content, which was basically that maybe specifically
I guess, yeah. I mean, I don't really have a problem with money.
Like that was kind of like the criticism, broadly speaking, and since you are talking about this, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that specifically.
I think that when I have an issue that I want to speak about, people will hear it.
Were you surprised by the reaction?
I didn't do that.
Seeing people losing their minds over Sydney Sweeney wasn't terribly surprising, given how much of a fuss she kicks up at any time she's mentioned. Her non-apology, her lack of groveling, obviously made because that is the one thing that they want in these situations. Groveling and penance. But Jennifer Lawrence's comments and Sydney Sweeney's non-response were both really interesting in their own right, because I think that they really do signal a bit of a sea change. One where actors, actresses, studios, and everyone in between have started to realize that they do not care whatsoever about leftist politics, but more specifically specifically their leftist politics. And more
Yeah, but I'm a resource bitch, man. I'm out constantly collecting resources.
gender or diversity quotas, storylines that make sense, and shirtless men running around punching holes in walls. It's not that much.
Like I have crates just for certain resources. Like I have just a wood crate, just a stone crate, just a leather crate.
For years, the industry has operated with a simple, unspoken rule. If you have a platform, you must use it
Yeah,
to
fuck you.
progressive politics, or risk being branded racist or bigoted or worse. And this rule has played out in countless ways. We have had
I like the terrifying amount of cannonballs my ship launches.
award speeches became less about acceptance of the actual award and more about proclaiming one's political opinions. This happened so much that even 2020 Ricky Gervais dedicated an entire speech of his own to calling celebrities out, accusing them of not even knowing what the real world is like.
Well, you say you're woke, but the companies you work for, I mean, unbelievable. Apple, Amazon, Disney. If ISIS started a streaming service, you'd call your agent, wouldn't you? So, if you do win an award
Ooh, I'm
tonight,
almost to the top of the map.
don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. So, if you win, right, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God, and fuck off, okay? So...
It would be nice if I went so far north I would just pop out on the south end of the map.
Places where ideologues could shove their political agendas, giving us insane storylines, unbelievable characters, and that's just the basic stuff. That's not even the worst of it. It also gave us a bunch of stupid dialogue like this.
I mean, here's the thing, Bruce. I'm great at controlling my anger. I do it all the time. When I'm catcalled in the street, when incompetent men explain my own area of expertise to me, I do it pretty much every day, because if I don't, I will get called emotional or difficult or might just literally get murdered. What's that? What's Puzzle? Is he or they with us?
The suit is little.
You serious?
Well, there you guys have it. Now you see Ruby Rose's single facial expression. The absolute crap show that was the term silence is violence, which was basically adopted by Hollywood, in a lot of ways became a weird, enforceable social contract for people in the industry. And those who didn't loudly adhere to it were fired, boycotted, and publicly shamed, like Chris Pratt, Lana, and Zachary. Side note, leftists also got attacked by their own here, like our girl Jennifer Lawrence, who also got flamed for not talking about issues in the Middle East early enough. I'm not kidding. Former industry people routinely explain that going against the progressive grain is actually suicide, and simply remaining apolitical was no longer. Neutrality itself is recast as a sort of like moral failing. But now, that contract has been torn up.
Hollywood is just spying us en masse. And it really felt like, oh, this is a really clear indication that we're not the cool club anymore.
In the wake of Donald Trump's election in 2024, and I guess also this sort of cultural pendulum sway in the direction of the right wing, I guess, something really interesting has happened, and that is this political arm of celebrity culture has gone almost completely silent. The same voices that once lectured America on its backwardness have now realized that absolutely nobody cares about what they have to say about anything. During the 2024 election, stars like Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Oprah Winfrey, George Clooney, and Julia Roberts threw their weight behind Kamala Harris through endorsements, fundraisers, and social media campaigns like the cringy Avengers Group FaceTime call. This gave me.
You mean assembling? Don, that's pretty good.
It is our pleasure to come together and and to get the vote out this election. Ugh.
Yeah, I'm with you, son. How about we start with what our voting plans are going to be, who we're going to bring to the polls with us, that sort of thing. Just
I think Kamala Harris needs a catchphrase.
Ooh, yeah, definitely a catchphrase.
How about this? I'm just off the top of my head. I can do this all day.
This gives me so much secondhand embarrassment. I have to keep reminding myself that these are not serious people. They are the theater kids. I was actually a theater kid, but I was never good at anything. So play one of the eyeball people from Hercules, you know, to pass the eyeball back and forth. I think I might play this before. I wish I could find the clip of that. I wish I could find the video that we have of that. I think that's about. It was embarrassing. What are they called? The fates. I was a fate, if you can believe it. I think that it completely checks out.
We knew you would be.
This Will Ferrell ad doesn't even endorse anyone. He just tells everyone to vote so Trump won't win, warning liberals that peers will hold anyone who doesn't vote responsible.
This election is going to be one of the closest in history. Your vote will make a difference. That means you, Gary. Oh, blah, blah, blah. I'm just one person. No. Shut the up, Gary. Last time, a few thousand votes Trump out of office. This time, we will hold you personally responsible, Gary.
I don't know, guys. This feels oddly threatening. Is this legal? It feels like it should be illegal. Yet, after Trump's win in 2024, a lot of this noise seemed to just go away overnight. And it seems like a lot of these people realized that they were at risk of alienating fans. Also, because I'm pretty sure a bunch of us will die of cringe if we have to see any more Avengers phone calls or a bunch of celebrities singing Imagine. Do you guys remember that when they all sang Imagine when we were all locked in our homes over the big cities? Still miss her. PR experts attributed this to a fear of career repercussions, that fans might be less forgiving, given over half the country use their voices to cast ballots. There was no Jennifer Lawrence saying, "Do not let this defeat you, let it enrage you," as after the 2016 election, and everyone else, aside from a few totally insane people like Robert De Niro, seemed to be scurrying back into their holes. A Hollywood Reporter analysis in January 2025 asked why celebrities were so silent about Trump this year, describing all of this as horrifying, contrasting this response with the vocal resistance in 2016. It also used to find their endorsements for the 2024 election made news but really failed to sway voters. And of course, just to be clear, this is not only about Trump. It's just there's so many clips of these people talking about him, and they're quite easy to find because, you know, I got to do a lot of research to make these videos. But this is also about the fact that they're not just quiet about Trump and his administration. They're just really quiet about all major progressive issues like the trans movement or the LGBT community or whatever. This silence has even extended towards award shows, which, as you all know, have been vehicles in the past for political posturing. At the 2025 Golden Globes, comedian Nikki Glaser, I've been told this is Glaser, but I want to say Glasser because that is how it's spelled, but whatever. Anyway, she briefly the complete ineffectiveness of celebrity endorsement, saying, "You're also famous, so talented, so powerful. I mean, you can really do anything, except tell the country who to vote for."
Now, some of you may know me as a stand-up comedian and from my appearances on Roast, but I am not here to roast you tonight. I want you to know that. And how could I, really? You're all so famous, so talented. I mean, you can really do anything. I mean, except to tell the country who to vote for, but it's okay. You'll get up next.
Glaser, similarly to Ricky Gervais in 2020, pointed out the massive disconnect between Hollywood elites and the masses, which was actually sort of perfectly exemplified recently when Billie Eilish, who is a millionaire, had to go with billionaires for having too much money.
If you're a billionaire, why are you a billionaire? No hate, but yeah, give me money away, Jordies. Love you guys. Thank you so much.
Like, self-awareness. Zero. Oh, no, billionaires have too much money, but I'm not. So I don't understand how money works, because no one's just walking around with $1 billion. That's not what this is. Anyway, The Atlantic called the entire Golden Globe award show a huge resistance compared to inspiring speeches by Meryl Streep and others, signaling the exhaustion and a recognition that woke advocacy no longer moves the needle. Then we also have people like Ellen DeGeneres and her wife who for sale in March 2025 amid rumors of fleeing Trump 2.0, but honestly, I think this has more to do with she got exposed as like an insufferable demon wench that people don't want to work with, and so she probably just ran away because of that, and made it seem like a Trump thing. I don't know. But like I said, this isn't about Trump. It's about how these people have made it like to attack normal, everyday, right-wing and conservative stances, even going so far as to attack fans themselves when we disagree with something, calling us bigoted or sexist or racist or whatever. Which also just doesn't work if you use a series of insults, because absolutely nobody cares about being called these names. I know I'm bigoted. I do not care. Thank you. But the failure, the disintegration of woke celebrity Hollywood does not stop here. As we've seen over the years, journalists have tried very hard to trap celebrities, actors, and actresses with questions posed to them, trying very hard to get a soundbite or force a specific answer out of them to fuel an agenda. We've also seen numerous situations recently that have taken place that show this is continuing to be done. Sydney Sweeney, of course, is one example, as she beautifully stonewalled this absolute new person. But I also mentioned on this channel a few weeks ago how Keira Knightley, in the most British of ways, essentially told a journalist to get effed when she was asked about J.K. Rowling basically being a giant transphobe. Tom Felton, who was also in Harry Potter, who played Draco Malfoy, was asked a similar question recently about J.K. Rowling. He answered that her views on trans people don't affect him, and he remains in admiration of her for the good things that she's done and accomplished in her life.
Does the sort of Twitterverse controversy around J.K. Rowling's views impact you at all, or impact your work on the world at all?
No, I can't say it does. I'm not really that attuned to it. The only thing I always remind myself is that I've been lucky enough to travel the world. Here I am in New York, and I have not seen anything to bring the world together more than Potter. And she's responsible for that, so I'm incredibly grateful.
Only a few years ago, a responses like this, would have never happened because they weren't allowed to happen. And celebrities have probably thought for the longest time that they had to toe the party line. Or maybe the majority of them are actually this insane. It's really hard to tell. But now this need to be a perfectly progressive leftist radical has come to an end. And I think that's a really, really interesting development. It seems that a couple things are happening. Number one, you have celebrities who don't seem to feel the need anymore to but simultaneously you also have a lot of celebrities and actresses who are now expressing their right to libertarian more center-slated viewpoints without any sort of pushback. And they're doing it more loudly, directly, and they're doing it with a pretty nice reception. This includes people like Spencer Pratt, who is currently going so hard at Governor Gavin Newsom over the failure of the California state government to help with Palisades fires, which were honestly like pretty horrific. And beyond that, a growing number of actors and actresses are switching from left-leaning or Democratic affiliations to conservative or independent stances, reflecting disillusionment with the asymmetry here doesn't indicate the tactical retreat. I think it's an indication of the collapse of an entire cultural regime. What I think we are witnessing right now is the rapid, visible disintegration of woke culture, not because its opinions and views have suddenly changed overnight, but because the three foundational pillars of all of this have simultaneously happened. Those being, the public has demonstrated in multiple areas that it is exhausted by celebrity moralizing and will punish it at the ballot box and at the box office. Studios and talent agencies, whose only real version is profit, let's be real, have quietly issued acknowledgments. Political preaching is now a liability, not an asset. Someone really needs to tell me this wrong. We've even seen this very recently with companies and studios slashing DEI programs altogether, removing them from public. And then we have progressive celebrities themselves who have performed the ultimate cost-benefit analysis and concluded that their opinions do not, in fact, make any difference, and that continuing to offer them only alienates the audience that pays their salaries. And this is all, obviously, just the tip of the iceberg. I actually pointed this out recently in a video that I made about Rachel Zegler, but in contrast to Keira Knightley, Jennifer Lawrence, and Sydney Sweeney, Zegler has made it her personal role to be as She gave a speech recently where she reaffirmed that actors and actresses have a duty to express their political opinions, which, no they don't.
And yet, crazily, she is more unpopular than ever. Nobody likes her. Nobody.
And I have to imagine that studios are seeing the writing on the wall here, because I dare say that all this is playing out on a financial level, which is obviously what we know moves things. Money moves things. Isn't that crazy? When the first pillar cracked and audiences stopped being held captive by celebrity worship and celebrity marketing and all of that, the changes then happened quite rapidly. And now everybody is openly hostile towards terrible entertainment and celebrity opinions. And I don't know if you guys have noticed that. In some genuinely hilarious surveys from 2024 and 2025 by YouGov and Talker Research, for example, it has been established that the majority of Americans don't want to know how celebrities vote. And genuinely hilariously, over 50% of respondents in the 2024 survey thought less of a celebrity once they established their political opinion. And a weird 7% said that they supported a political candidate because of a celebrity endorsing them. Just like, okay, who on earth is getting confused about the voting patterns from celebrities and Hollywood? What is wrong with you? With this in mind, it's not really hard to see how this translated to box office failures and the second pillar cracking / fall too. Studio executives, if we're being honest, are probably not really ideologues, but they are more or less accountants in better suits. By December 2024, the internal data was unmeasured. Films and shows with overt progressive messaging were underperforming at a historic rate. Disney's 2023 to 2024 slate had already lost nearly $1 billion on quote-unquote flops. Netflix subscriber growth, for instance, had flattened when executives started tweeting about politics. The message from every quarterly earnings call was the same. And politics is the fastest way to this. The New York Times and the Hollywood 2024 to 2025, a post-woke era, with films like Moana 2 and Wicked succeeding by avoiding negative messaging, unlike flops like The Acolyte. PG-rated films hit 33% of the 2024 US ticket sales recently, the highest since 1995. Controversial fare over overtly political themes. Alright, so this video turned out a lot longer than I wanted it to be, but here we are, so congratulations if you made it this far. But with that in mind, I will give you my final thoughts here in the time. It's clear all over that from obvious progressivism is a way from this cultural perspective. And ultimately that makes sense given that this is an industry driven by profits, not by vibes and essays. There is obviously so much more to this, especially in the way of the content itself and but when we look at celebrity culture, the loudness, the forcefulness is just seemingly falling off. And going forward, it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of content gets produced by Hollywood and how that's marketed and what celebrities are told to say about it. But at least for now, all of the wind has come out of their sails. And I think we're about to hear a lot less of their political and even social opinions.
A little bit of target practice.
But in the end, I am absolutely of the opinion that everybody is entitled to their own views and ideas. But at least for now, for the foreseeable future, I doubt that we will see any of these people climbing back onto their soapbox to promote theirs. Now, on that note, and before I refer to all of you, this is Just Fair. My checkout link is in the link in the description. This is their biggest sale of the year, so if you are looking for an awesome sleep aid or the many other things that Beam makes, absolutely check them out. I promise you won't regret it. Now, I will refer to all of you. What do you all think? Are you on my side of this issue where you're like, yeah, I don't care what celebrities think? Are you on the other side of this where you hang on their every word? Are you somewhere in the middle where you think that them expressing their ideas is absolutely their right, but it's sort of maybe a necessary evil? What do you make about the fact that they have been relatively silent since Trump was elected and with this cultural swing that has happened? Do you think that it's inevitable, that it's surprising? Are you surprised by the comments of the people I highlighted in this video, like Jennifer Lawrence and Keira Knightley and Sydney Sweeney? What do you make of their responses to all of this? Or what do you generally make of this issue overall? As always, if you have made it this far in the video, congratulations. I always like having you along for the full ride. If you are new here and you're not subscribed already and you would like some more with me and more of this kind of content, feel free to subscribe to the channel as well as leave this video a like and a comment because I do read the majority of them and I like hearing your feedback. As I always say, I hope you wonderful little chickadee people stay safe and well and make good choices. And if you don't see me in a video before Thanksgiving, if you are here in the United States, have a beautiful Thanksgiving, but I'm sure we'll see each other before then. And I will see your wonderful little faces in the next video.
But nobody can read a statue that is somehow older than farming in a bronze machine that predicted eclipses. Today we're going to tell us facts we still don't understand, tell you what the best evidence says, and leave you with a simple rule to separate.
Oh shit, I'm going the wrong way. Why didn't anybody tell me I was going the wrong way?
Welcome. Now look, most ancient history videos on this very platform kind of treat rumors as facts. What we're going to do today is go the other way. Proof first, excavators, labs, museums, reputable scientists, that kind of thing. And then we'll get to the weirdness that surrounds it. So when there are two good explanations, we'll weigh them both and you can too. Let's jump in. The Voynich manuscripts. Okay, so in 1912, there's a book dealer and his name is Wilfred Voynich, and he walks into a Jesuit villa near Rome and he buys a manuscript that will proceed to mess with every code break of the next century. Today, it's sitting in Yale's Beinecke
Do you guys realize that? Are you listening to what JD Vance is saying right now? Are you listening?
I would just like to know why they are always yelling. Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to hell. There are a bunch of dark jokes in there somewhere, but I wouldn't be making them. I'm very sorry about this. I really needed a break after December because I don't know how many of you realize this, but I really do pack all your tea orders myself, and there were many of them. So I'm not here to thank you. On the other hand, now you know why I needed a ton of additional sleep. Speaking of tea really quickly, I am getting extremely low on my peppermint white chocolate because as you guys know, this is a seasonal blend. Once it is gone for the year, that is it until I bring it back in September or October. Anyway, get yourself a box if you want some before it runs out. Or if you haven't tried the tea before and you're new here, give it a crack. Linked in the description. I promise it's really tasty. And I am aggressively working on getting people loose leaf in these cool little tins. They're so cool, which should be in stock probably in the next month or so, I would imagine. That is all about that. Let us continue. So a lot has happened in the last, 2 weeks since we have been in the new year. Oh my god, it is going to be a long 2026. But really it seems like anytime anything happens, whether it's globally or domestically, there are a bunch of really extreme reactions, admittedly from all over the political spectrum, but particularly from our friends over at Progressive Ireland. And I can't help but wonder if they're doing okay. The removal of President Maduro from Venezuela by American special forces has resulted in protests by Western leftists, mostly saying that America needs to return the country's sovereign leader, something socialism good.
Hands off Venezuela! Hands off Venezuela! President Maduro!
Meanwhile, every South American I know is pretty happy about this development, if I'm being honest. Then we have the Iranian protests. These have taken place again and again over the last number of years, but this time, this seems to be their biggest and the most aggressive towards overthrowing the Islamic regime. Despite protesters being mowed down by regime officials, they just show up again and again and keep having their say. It should be pretty clear where I stand on this as well, but of course, protesting.
Yeah, sank the crap out of that clown.
Dude, why? Like this. We also recently had the
Oh, I want to hurry up and sink these. I got some 13s out there I can go after.
Good was in her car, seemingly
Oh, get off of me, you clown.
in an attempt to stop her,
Where you
shot
at?
and killed her. It is, though, shocking to none of them. This has become a very, very partisan issue. The right wing has interpreted this as an F around, find out movement. She shouldn't have been there. She was gleeful when she was driving it in. Good's wife was encouraging her to drive the car in the first place. The left wing, on the other hand, has been saying that she was trying to get out of the situation, that she was fearful and accidentally accelerated, and she wasn't trying to hit the officer at all. So the use of lethal force by him was completely unnecessary.
Do you think that it is possible that she was trying to escape the interaction?
Escape what? Escape what?
Do you think it's possible that she was trying to escape the interaction?
Regardless of how you feel about this situation, who is right and who is wrong, it is undeniable that it has blown up. It's kind of funny because I get the impression that everybody wanted to sort of George Floyd this situation until the left realized that other leftists don't care that this woman died because she's white. That sounds like a joke, but it's not.
I was like, I don't know if it's the right thing to do. It feels kind of wrong being here in some way. I don't know why.
Where were those 13s?
I don't know. Like,
I lost them.
where that stems from. Like, I mean, part of it is being like a white woman.
Oh, that was going to be a sweet battle.
So I feel like white tears.
They got to be up north somewhere.
Always something that's helpful.
I saw them.
Necessary. Black and brown people have been experiencing this.
And not that it really matters what I
Come on,
think,
get over
but
this
for what it's
wave.
worth,
They're
if I
over here somewhere, ain't it?
I would say that regardless of being on the left or right. But knowing what these kinds of people are usually like, I think it is more likely than not, in a world of probabilities, that Renee Good was trying to hit the officer in question. It's so funny how I'm always like, I don't want to get into this, and then I keep talking about it. Anyway, last point on this. Overall, at the end of the day, we genuinely don't know what happened here. We don't definitively have an answer about what guided this woman's
There we go.
actions, and
There's the fight I'm
somebody
looking
had
for.
to make a split-second choice, and here we are.
Also, here I am, editing City from the future, who forgot to say that this is around the point where we do the sponsorship, which we're going to watch because I work very hard on them, and this video is sponsored by the one, the only, Big. Hey, guess what? I promised myself that I'd be in bed by midnight, and so you're gonna come with me while I make that happen. Because I'm so good at planning, I'm drinking my dream sleep hot chocolate, and now I'm before bed. So smart. Now, you see, for the sake of these, I do like taking the dream sleeping pills, but, you know, it's the 90s, it's a hot night night, it's cold, we're in winter. And because I love a good sweet treat, I cannot sleep the cinnamon coconut flavor. Now, I have harped on about dream a lot because I love it, and it is ridiculously easy to make. It's hot chocolate. You get yourself a cup, you get yourself your bag of dream, put some milk in that bad boy, put that bad boy in the microwave, or I guess on the stove, dream, add it to your milk, and give it a mix. And honestly, this is the frother that I have from Dream, and I love it. It is it's one of my favorite things, and I kind of use it for everything now. And then it's just a matter of waiting for your dreams to kick in. One of the reasons I love this product down to the ground is because it's like a peaceful transition from awake to asleep. You don't get hit aggressively. It's just, it's peaceful, it's calming, and I love the fact that I get to wake up and makes me I feel good in the morning, and I get straight out of bed and go on with my day. So my little love bugs, let's kick off 2026 with awesome sleep. As you know, I freaking love Dream. I love this product, and they are offering up to 40% off for a limited time. So click the link in the description or go to shopme.com and use code SIGNAL. But through all of this, I can't help but watch these moments and think, why was a mother in the middle of a nice raid in the first place? And why are progressive women in particular in situations like it's some sort of GTA game? We could have had a really, really nice start to 2026, but apparently everybody chose violence. Every time I turn around, it seems like there's some white progressive woman doing this.
regime Iranians. And don't even get me started on all of the white woman Muslim converts popping up all over the place. As time goes on, very progressive women almost seem to be devolving into this absolute state of madness, leading them to support incredibly corrosive and anti-life regimes and organizations and people that completely contradicts their worldview as it exists in the United States. Supporting actual dictators while trying to frame their own president as well. Look, you do not have to like the guy, but a dictator, he is not. If he is a dictator, he is doing an incredibly crappy job of it. Enact more right-wing stuff, chubby boy. What are we doing? They are out here embracing progressive societies and cultures, ones that subjugate women especially, while screaming about imaginary oppression here in the States. They reframe every self-inflicted tragedy as brutal injustice while ignoring facts surrounding these events. And I, for one, am completely fascinated by their bizarre and contradictory behavior, including tattooing strangers' names onto their own bodies for the cause.
I told myself I was never going to get another tattoo. I just have a giant one. I planned it for a long time. And now I think I'm going to get her name tattooed on me. Renee Nicole. But choosing where, but maybe that's it. Maybe I'll have a list of the people killed by our own government.
Stop it. Get some help.
I mean, what? Just last summer we had a bunch of people doing their own no dictatorships and no king's rallies. And now we're here.
So I just murdered an innocent civilian bystander today. So that's where we're at in this country. If you don't like where we're at in this country, I invite you to bedrock with me on January 20th. To just not do any of our responsibilities at all and see how this country goes. Because if you're a woman, you know how much we actually learn. And I'm sick and tired of propping up a fascist regime.
I would ask if you're okay, but I see you have a septum ring, so that answers that question. You know, now we have these folks supporting a foreign regime that runs protests in the States, and it's really all because they hate Trump. And no matter how bad some other foreign leader is, somehow Trump is always worse. Now, people have joked for really years at this point about this little mind virus that people contract that makes them act like noodle insane people. But, you know, in this context, I think that it is largely what we are seeing play out here. And I think that this stereotype, particularly towards white women, so unfortunately, but I think that this stereotype does exist for a reason. And with that said, while I definitely try not to tar every person who might be with the exact same brush all of the time, there's always truth, I think, preconceived notions that we may have of certain individuals. So, and really all of this is that white women, for some inexplicable reason, are becoming much more violent and radicalized and hysterical and orientated. And I want to know why. As a complete unrelated aside, the dichotomy that is white women in the United States is so funny to me because on the one hand, we overwhelmingly vote Republican, and on
What's
the
wrong, baby girl?
Is this don't kill people? People kill people. Okay, in that case, bread doesn't make sandwiches, people make sandwiches. Cars don't drive people to work, people drive people to work.
When I sat down to put together this video, one of the first things that occurred to me was I had wanted to love to these women because I have never been left-wing, I have never been woke, and so watching them act this way, both online and offline, is sort of mystifying to me, and I really want to know what is guiding them. So after some reflection, and of course talking to my formerly leftist female friends, I have a couple of things that I think are playing a role. The misguided radicalization of one another on social media, complete lack of consequences, entitlement, and genuinely believing things are much more extreme than they are due to extreme lack of education. It's like when you get into an echo chamber, there is a radicalization that happens because everybody just keeps like riling each other up, and there's no alternative viewpoint undocumented, and you end up driving your car into ICE officials. So let me illustrate. Turning our attention to Minnesota particularly, we've seen a lot of this kind of behavior play out.
If I continually see you following us, interfering with us, honking your horn, blocking our cars, you have a very high probability of making a really bad decision and being arrested today, okay? I'm not. Okay. I'm giving her a warning to not interfere with what we're doing, to not make a bad decision today and ruin your life. Okay, thank you. Okay, alrighty, thank you, have a good day.
Dude, these people are so unbelievably rude and entitled, and I get secondhand rage watching them do this crap. I don't know how the people in these situations stay calm. I would not stop. And at these protest sites, not only in Minnesota, but everywhere really, these progressive protesters block the roads, harass random people, cause traffic jams, include ambulances and other emergency vehicles. What's going to sound a little bit weird is that they feel entitled to act this way, and there are several reasons for this, but one of the biggest ones is that particularly in cities like Minneapolis, police have reportedly been told to stay down, which in turn really only emboldens protesters who believe that their actions won't have any meaningful consequences because police don't do anything. So when an agency like ICE rolls into town, who are there to get things done, who don't give a crap about this weird unspoken arrangement between the police officers and protesters, people get hurt. And no, it's not because ICE agents are these mindless brutes who just want to, punch people in the face. It's because of the conduct of protesters and how out of control they are. I mean, one woman I found online says that she drives around looking for ICE agents to harass because she believes that they are kidnapping people off the street.
I am shocked because only a few weeks ago, I was driving around this town that I live in Charlotte, doing very similar things, looking for ICE agents, trying to prevent them from kidnapping people off the street.
Hey, you want to know what well-adjusted people don't do? This. I'm sure many of you have seen the videos at this point of women saying that they are bringing their children and babies to protest to stop ICE doing crowd control. And I think that's the frustrating part about this. Behind the entitlement and the belief that they are free of consequences, there is this extreme emotion that is fueling their behaviors. And this misguided belief that they are fighting against oppression, they are fighting for the rights of those who cannot fight for themselves. The irony for me, and I do feel like this goes back to the education and misinformation, misinformed thing that I mentioned earlier, is that if these women actually knew who ICE was trying to get and the illegals that these women are inadvertently, not even inadvertently, they're just directly protecting them, if they knew who these people were and their crimes, I don't know how they would handle it. Maybe they would double down, but I feel like maybe it would cause a little bit of self-reflection. For example, in Minnesota, ICE have been trying to apprehend illegals who have committed SA against children, distributed child abuse material, murdered people, SA adults, and so on and so forth. And many of these people have had removal orders in place since the early 2000s. So ladies, why are you choosing to defend people who have assaulted children or murdered your fellow Americans?
Can you guys please pick a lane? I'm getting it.
And because this breed of woman is just the gift that keeps on giving, the insanity is non-stopping. This woman says that she wishes Renee Good killed the ICE agent because they're humans.
That's the freighter. That's the big one.
This woman said she's emotionally exhausted and burned out from having to carry across her life alongside all the political upheaval and recent events in Minnesota. She asks how she can coexist with these people. I'm not sure she means ICE or right-wingers, but regardless, she says that she must put on a happy face in life while people are being killed in the streets, sharing fears about World War III or a civil war, and ending the video by asking what to do.
At what point do we make this
just stop coexisting with these people. Because honestly, I'm exhausted. I'm physically, mentally, and emotionally draining. I have to put on a face every day like everything's fine. I have to go to work, and I have to sell shit, and I have to come home, and I have to do this homework, and put them on the bus to go to school. While people are living in me. And we're watching it. And they're telling us we're not saying what we're saying. I just feel like I'm going crazy.
And get an exorcism. That's what you should do. Jokes aside, I can actually empathize with this woman a little bit because I can understand how distressing and traumatizing it has to be to think and believe that government officials are just gunning people down in high numbers in the streets. And honestly, it's how I feel presently about what is going on definitively in Iran. In the US context, while things are certainly heated and negative things are happening, this is a factual reality, these women seem to exist in a different reality to the rest of us, one that is probably disorientating and scary. You know, when everything's 1,000% worse than it is. I think that their perception of this is not grounded in anything tangible or observable. Does this look like a person who is tethered to the same planet as the rest of us? Be so serious. And really, this rolls us around to, I think, probably two of my last points about what is feeding into all of this behavior. Many of these women are posted in their TikTok echo chambers, or their Facebook echo chambers, and people still use Facebook. As I have discussed in other videos, TikTok is extremely more and more and more on the same content at an extremely alarming and predatory rate. And so, see how this space will soon become all they consume. This kind of content is all they consume, all they're exposed to. And because misinformation is so common and so prevalent on these apps, it's very easy to become radicalized and think that there is earth-shattering immediacy to every single issue. Hence the videos that I have been showing you. But the here is that most of these women, probably all of them honestly, tie their identity and their emotions to their politics. And on a long enough timeline, I think it destroys them. Progressivism as an ideology, and I suppose as a concept, makes everything unstable, including a person's mental health, because it makes issues feel like they're all the time. And on a related, but the thing we're not going to get into in this video note, this kind of raises a lot of questions around tribalism and around sort of in-group thinking and safety in numbers, really. But I also think that's why we see those funny but ultimately depressing polls, which show that a huge portion of left-wing women antidepressants and other stabilizing medication. I initially was going to say you have to ask yourself why that is, but I think it's fairly obvious. Like, seriously, this is not the behavior of a mentally well person.
Ever fucking comment me about forgetting MAGA ever again. I will not forgive. Ever. I will never forget. Ever. And your protest votes are just as bad. Those who can be reformed and brought back into the system. That does not mean forgiveness. There is no forgiveness after this.
These videos are so hard to make because every single clip I include gives me this, like, level of just, whoa, I don't like it. Anyway, these kinds of reactions, like this behavior seems to be the rule rather than the exception, which is just such a grim reality. The media and Democrats, I would say, and I think the right does this too, to a lesser extent, they will theorize about specific issues, really whipping people up into a frenzy of sorts, like an emotional frenzy that has this sort of immediacy about it, over situations that are just not justified, causing instability, violent tendencies, suicidal empathy towards all those they deem oppressed. This is how you get a scene such as this, walking the streets of Portland. Why are you like this? Tying your identity to your politics is probably wrong, because it means that literally not look at any information that might prove them wrong. And when they did, they'd instantly question the validity of the source, declaring it untrustworthy, rather than contending with the information presented. Now, to be perfectly fair, this is not just a left-wing thing. This absolutely happens to people all over the political spectrum, including those of us on the right. And it is interesting because it then brings up some psychological factors that come into play with relation to this. Off the top of my head, called the backfire effect, which I'm not going to get into or explain. But in the context of this video, in the progressive mindset, in the progressive headspace, it is uncomfortable, it is painful to absorb information that proves you wrong, because then you have to admit that you got something wrong. And if you got this thing over here wrong, then if you're being honest with yourself, you have to ask what other things you may have gotten wrong. And as you slowly pull the threads of your ideology and your belief system and whatnot, it starts to unravel as you realize that maybe the things that you thought weren't accurate in the first place. As it unravels more and more, your entire belief system crumbles because it was never built on any meaningful foundation. It's worth remembering, and I'm going to reiterate to these people, it's not just an ideology, it's not just a belief system or a thing that you think at the time, it's them as a person. It is who they are as a human being because they have connected their identity and their emotions to their politics. And they have decided, no matter how arbitrarily, that good people believe this list of things over here and bad people believe this list of things over here. And you best believe that they will never, ever, ever find themselves aligned to that rather than believing and thinking all of those horrible bad things. Anyway, I hope this might explain why some of your leftist friends and loved ones that hate your guts. Jokes aside, this type of phrase clearly results in some additionally weird things, like leftist oppression of Iranians or Venezuelans, supporting those oppressors over the citizen protesting and even trying to help illegal migrants evade ICE when those have committed heinous crimes. And although progressive women aren't shy about white men as equal, they refuse to even acknowledge dangerous men when those men happen to come from minority groups. I would love to say this topic is much more straightforward than it is, but honestly, like, unpacking ideologies and trying to understand what people like to say from the regular level is actually really challenging. My personal belief about this particular group of people, these white people, they're not evil, and I don't think they're actually setting out to hurt anybody. I think they're deeply, deeply misguided. And their belief system goes so deep when it comes to these issues that they think they're doing the right thing. And that's probably alarming if I give it some thought. I like to be charitable. I want to be charitable.
Oh, there's 2 freighters. Holy shit.
Is okay. It's not as if any group on the political spectrum is infallible, but certainly when it comes to unhelpful, unhinged, a lot of these women are absolutely top of the list for acting craziest. And I do want to note as well that I also don't think the policing on this topic is as cut and dry as to make it. And maybe I'll talk about this in another video, but I do think we are setting precedents here that in the hands of a left-wing government, a more radical government, wouldn't be helpful to our actual citizens that reside here in the United States. So, I've got some thoughts and feelings around all of that, but I suppose at the end of the day, and in the end, we are people that ideologically are incredibly far gone. And as long as they radicalize echo chambers, as long as they are not tethered to reality and they are being faced with the immediacy of all these issues, feel earth-shattering and as if they are going to have these horrible, deleterious consequences, these women are going to continue to act this way. In the end, I do think it's important to see this behavior just aired mine at checkout using the link in the description. It's one of my favorite sponsors, so if you would like to support them and my channel by extension, absolutely get some. I promise you will not regret it. It's good stuff, I promise you. Now, what do you all think? I'm so curious, especially for those of you who I know are former leftists or who are sort of center left, because I know there's a bunch of you in this audience. What do you make of this? What do you think of all of this lunacy that's unfolding? Do you think that my assessments here are correct of what guides this behavior? Do you think that, no, there's probably some other factors at play? And if so, what are those factors? Are you somebody who relates to these people? Are you like me and this behavior is just so alien to you? Do you think that this is generally good? Is it bad? Is it maybe somewhere in the middle? And what do you generally make of this issue overall? As you have made it this far in the video, congratulations. I always subscribe. If you are new here and you've not subscribed already and you would like to see more of me and more of this kind of content, feel free to subscribe to the channel as well as leaving this video a like and a comment because I do read the majority of them and I like hearing your feedback. Like I always say, I hope you wonderful little people stay safe and well and make good choices and go and drink beam and have a wonderful sleep. And I will see your wonderful little chicken heads in the next video.
I just wanted to briefly give you the latest information in the David case and the murder of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. I know I've made a couple videos yapping about this, and it's a really genuinely difficult topic to even talk about because of how disgusting it is. But the reason why I keep bringing it up is because there is a not small number of people, a relatively strong movement, the Dipshits for David, that are constantly trying to brainwash people into believing that David has been framed. They keep regurgitating that, well, they haven't been yet, thus we know he's innocent and he has been framed, he's actually a victim in all this, and trying to bury all the real information and muddy everything, even though so much of this evidence is publicly available evidence.
Oh, I got him!
All the stuff that's in the case right now, there is so much information you can find that if you have a functioning frontal lobe will lead you to one conclusion. David is pure evil. And every new piece of information from the prosecution here is beyond disturbing. So I just blabber about this because I want to provide the real facts about the case here to try and combat all of the incorrect gobbledygook people are spitting out there, this mumbo jumbo from this group that for some reason wants everyone to be supportive of David and like plug their ears to what the prosecution is doing. It's fucking lunacy.
Mark, the details alleged by prosecutors are frankly disgusting. In this preliminary 8-page brief signed by LA District Attorney Nathan Hoffman, prosecutors paint a picture of a rising pop star who they say lured a young girl and then eliminated her when she threatened to expose their relationship and derail his fame.
This had been brought up previously with the potential motive behind David's killing of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. He had known her since she was 11 and sexually abused her, and he didn't even hide this deplorable situation. She had appeared in like streams, there's videos of the two of them together. His community was even aware of her, but according to the mods, they didn't know that she was a child. They were unaware of her age, nor did they know that she was reported missing. I don't know if that's true or not, or if the mods are just trying to cover their own ass so they don't end up on the hook and in trouble. Couldn't tell you, but the point is, there is a lot of evidence with these two publicly together in photos, videos, all of that. And at some point, it is alleged that she made a threat about, making it more known that she's a child. She is a minor. And thus the prosecution alleges that the motive was David wanting to save his career because if that information got out, it would damage his blossoming career. So in order to try and save that, he killed her.
second time today, attorneys for the singer, whose real name is David Burke, fought to seal the brief that prosecutors believe lays out a specific timeline and evidence of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez's murder. Prosecutors allege Rivas Hernandez and Burke first met when she was just 11 years old. They have explicit sexual photos of the two. The brief also claims Burke stabbed Celeste several times and watched her bleed to death.
Now, in the previous information that was provided by prosecution, they were talking about the child pornography that they found on David's phone. Now they are also saying that there are explicit sexual photos of David and Celeste together. So that is probably the child porn that they were referring to then. Also saying that the two had met when she was 11. And the autopsy report was recently made public, where the cause of death was revealed to be sharp objects through the torso. So they are alleging that David stabbed her multiple times and then watched her bleed to death.
In the days after prosecutors claimed David had slaughtered Rivas Hernandez, they say he purchased tools to dismember her body. Prosecutors say Amazon delivered 2 chainsaws, a body bag, and blue inflatable swimming pool to David's home, all ordered under a fake name. Prosecutors say David cut off 2 of her fingers because one of them had a tattoo of his name on it. Prosecutors also allege they have text messages that discuss sex between the two, her pregnancy, and an abortion.
Every new piece of information that comes out from this case here is just shockingly evil. Like, this guy is the fucking devil, man.
I'm gonna be full after this, so.
It's unthinkable, just actual unfathomable evil. So, there's allegations that she was pregnant and also had an abortion, and they also have evidence of text messages exchanged between David and Celeste about sex. There were some headlines floating around earlier, like yesterday, that apparently said that this is from Celeste to David, that all they do is have sex and hang out, and she wants something more than that. That's so fucked up. This is a child that David is routinely sexually abusing. Now, the method of chopping up her body to try and hide it was never disclosed to my knowledge, but here the prosecution is saying that they found evidence that he had purchased chainsaws and an inflatable pool, and that's how he was dismembering her corpse. Her corpse was found in pieces in the trunk of his vehicle after roughly 5 months decomposing in there. And another thing is, with this information about her pregnancy and abortion, it reminded me that when this story was first breaking and I was first covering it, there were a lot of like screenshots being shared around of things David had said to his community, and one of them did mention a child on the way. Now, I don't imagine Discord screenshots from David are going to be anything the prosecution is going to be using in court in any big capacity. I imagine they have far stronger evidence than that. But even still, the fact that stuff like this exists is extremely alarming, and it is publicly accessible information here. To my knowledge, those screenshots, like the one where he said he had a kid on the way with @deleted_user, haven't been debunked as some kind of hoax or photoshopped or a user that was impersonating him. I haven't seen anything to that effect, but community members seem to think that he was joking about that it was just a bit of a goof about the kid on the way. Though, in light of what the prosecution alleges about Celeste being pregnant and abortion, seems like there's a chance it wasn't a joke. But again, I don't think Discord messages here are going to be something the prosecution is relying on. I imagine they have far more solid evidence, but I just wanted to mention this because it reminded me, and it is just another piece of publicly available information that is out there that is now having even more weight put on it because of what the prosecution has been alleging with everything they have.
and text messages where Celeste threatens to expose Burke and destroy his career. In July, months after prosecutors say he'd stabbed her to death, Burke placed her body in the inflatable pool he'd ordered to prevent her blood from spilling onto his garage floor and used a chainsaw to cut off her limbs.
The medical examiner's report released just last week had noted those pieces of blue plastic in Rivas Hernandez's remains. Prosecutors now say those pieces of blue plastic were pieces of the inflatable pool that they say David had placed her body in. Burke has pleaded not guilty. He will stay locked up in jail until his next court date in May.
I don't think that's some kind of big coinky-dink there that the blue plastic that was noted in that report from the body happens to also potentially match the inflatable pool that they allege he had purchased in addition to those chainsaws. Like, I think if anyone's got their thinking caps on, and if you're actually bothering to pay attention to the case and actually look at the evidence, even the evidence that is publicly accessible, it should be an obvious conclusion here that David is not innocent. He is not some fucking angel, some saint that's been framed by a ne'er-do-well out there that's trying to, ruin David for their dubious schemes. David is pure evil. That's what I believe, and I think all of the evidence points to that fact as well.
Former prosecutor turned criminal defense attorney R.J. Dreiling says David's defense team will seize on one detail.
They note in the brief that David was sending text messages to Celeste after her death. They're going to use that to prove that, look, there's no way he knew that she was dead or responsible for it. He still tried to communicate with her after her death.
That's a pretty fucking weak argument, if you ask me. No. All of this evidence, it's hooey. It's a little hooey because the only fact that matters is David was sending her text messages after she was already murdered. Why would he do that if he knew she was dead? Wouldn't make any sense. Checkmate. Gotcha. Like, that's trash. But I think that is a complete trash argument because this is clearly someone who is going to great lengths to try and hide this. Chopping up, dismembering her corpse and stuffing it in a trunk. I imagine that even someone with only a handful of neurons could have come up with the scheme of still sending text messages even after death to try and give himself an alibi. Like, no, look guys, I didn't know. See, I sent messages when she was dead. I didn't know. It's terrible. Who could have done this? We gotta find who did this. There's a maniac on the loose. Like, I think it is a terrible, terrible argument. Now, of course, they're paid to represent him. They have to do their job. I get it, I guess. But my point is, I don't think that's going to be very strong on their side. I just really don't. Anyway, as always, praying that there will be justice for Celeste Rivas Hernandez here in this case, and just wanted to give you the latest update. That's really about it. So, yeah. Bungie is engaged in a lawsuit right now that I find extremely interesting. And I tickled it a little bit last night on stream, but I want to get into the actual spaghetti and meatballs today. Now, obviously, this isn't Bungie's first rodeo with lawsuits. They've been involved in a couple high-profile ones I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, but I wouldn't necessarily call them seasoned veterans, that this is just, business as usual. Not like Nintendo, who has more lawsuits than Elon Musk does children. Bungie has few and far between lawsuits, but most of you hear about them, such as like their big one not long ago where they actually had a huge victory over cheat makers, which I think was great.
History has a weird habit of leaving behind one clue, 10 bad theories, and a giant argument that never dies. In this video, we're going through 33 historical mysteries that still refuse to sit still. vanished colonies, missing tombs, ghost ships, fake maps, royal secrets, and cases where the official answer feels just a little too convenient. Some of these are creepy, some are absurd, and a few are honestly suspicious enough to make your ancestors look like they were hiding receipts. 1. Jack the Ripper is still the king of unresolved historical nightmares because the case has everything: brutal murders, terrified streets, chaotic police work, creepy letters, and more suspects than a bad detective show. In 1888, at least 5 women were murdered in Whitechapel, and the violence was so shocking that people instantly started inventing theories at full speed. Ever since then, the Ripper has been blamed on doctors, artists, aristocrats, random locals, and basically any Victorian man who looked like he owned a dark coat. The biggest problem is painfully simple. The evidence was badly handled, poorly recorded, or never collected properly in the first place. So the most famous serial killer in history remains a faceless shadow wrapped in newspaper hysteria. The mystery survives because the case was messy from day one, and Victorian London basically turned panic into an art form. 2. The Dyatlov Pass incident feels like a horror film written by a mountain. In 1959, 9 experienced hikers died in the Ural Mountains after apparently cutting their tent open from the inside and running into the freezing night with barely any clothes. That one detail alone is enough to make your brain start inventing monsters. Some bodies were found near a cedar tree, others farther away, and a few had injuries dramatic enough to turn the case into a magnet for every theory on Earth. Avalanches, secret military tests, infrasound, yetis, aliens, cursed snow, take your pick. Modern analysis leans toward a natural explanation involving unstable snow, brutal weather, and panic under impossible conditions. Which is honestly
There was
scary.
actually where they found out that there could have been an avalanche.
Just nature deciding your survival plan has been rejected without appeal. The missing piece is not whether something terrifying happened. It absolutely did. The mystery is exactly how fast everything went wrong. 3. The Bermuda Triangle is one of history's greatest examples of humans seeing a dangerous place, and deciding danger alone is somehow not dramatic enough. This region between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico became famous for vanished
You know what?
ships
I
and
want to look.
aircraft, but the actual story is less supernatural and more brutally practical. It is a heavily traveled area with sudden storms, rough seas, strong currents, navigation errors, human overconfidence, and the kind of weather that can ruin your week and erase the evidence. Still, once newspapers and pop culture got involved, the place turned into an oceanic theater production starring aliens, sea monsters, magnetic weirdness, and portals to somewhere very inconvenient. Scientists have never found anything uniquely paranormal there. The ocean is simply dangerous enough on its own.
Where's like the
That may be the
Wikipedia?
least magical answer possible, but it is also the most humbling. The sea does not need a curse. It already has physics, weather, and zero sympathy. 4. Roanoke is the kind of mystery that makes historians stare at one carved word for centuries and somehow never get bored of it. In 1587, English settlers founded a colony on Roanoke
Maybe
Island.
this.
Their governor, John White, returned to England
No.
for supplies, got delayed by war, and did not make it back until 1590. When he finally returned, the colony
There
was
we go.
empty. No obvious battle scene, no pile of skeletons, no neat ending. Just the word Croatoan carved into a post, like history left a clue, and then walked off laughing. The strongest theory is that the settlers moved and joined local indigenous communities, especially on nearby Croatoan Island. That is far more plausible than a supernatural mass disappearance. But the lack of final proof keeps the mystery alive. Roanoke survives because it offers the perfect historical frustration. Enough evidence to suggest an answer, not enough to shut everyone up. 5. Medieval dancing
Isn't
plays
there-
sound made up by somebody who got too excited writing a sermon. But chroniclers described outbreaks where groups of people danced uncontrollably for days, sometimes until collapse. The most famous case hit Strasbourg in 1518, though it was not the only one. Imagine looking out your window and seeing half the town trapped in a nightmare flash mob. At the time, people blamed spirits, curses, divine punishment, and other classic medieval explanations. Modern historians lean toward mass psychological distress, social contagion, religious fear, and the crushing stress of life in an age already packed with famine, disease, and misery. In other words, people may have broken down together in a way their culture could only express through movement.
Stop telling me what
It's bizarre because it is bizarre. But that is what makes it so fascinating. This was not just odd behavior. It may have been collective panic turning into choreography, which is both tragic and deeply unsettling. 6. The Man in the Iron Mask is the perfect royal mystery because even the title sounds like it was focus grouped for maximum drama. The prisoner was real, but the famous Iron Mask was probably more legend than fact. Historical evidence suggests he wore a black velvet mask, which is less theatrical but still extremely suspicious. He was held during the reign of Louis XIV, moved between prisons under heavy secrecy, and died in the Bastille in 1703. Authorities worked so hard to hide his identity that they guaranteed future generations would become completely normal about it, which of course did not happen. Was he a disgraced noble, an unwanted witness, a political...
The mafia thrives on tradition. Power is meant to be earned or inherited. It's not handed over. The 5 families in New York were set in stone, and the Profaci family had its rightful heirs. But Joe Colombo, he rewrote the script. He wasn't born into power. He wasn't even the next in line to become boss. But when an internal coup threatened the old order, Joe Colombo made one move that changed everything. He stayed loyal. As a reward for his loyalty, the commission did something unheard of. They didn't just hand him control of a family. They let him put his name on it.
To the Colombo family, salute!
But there's a cost to making history. As Colombo built his reputation, he broke the mafia's tradition of living in the shadows, and he stepped into the spotlight. His bold leadership made him powerful, but also made him a target. Because one day, in front of thousands of people at a public rally, Colombo's fate was sealed. And I was there that day. I was 12 steps away from him when it happened, and it was a shock. The man walked up and pulled the trigger. Was this the price of his war with the FBI? Or did the mafia decide he was never meant to have this power in the first place? As a former capo to the Colombo family, let me take you inside the rise and the very sad and shocking fall of Joe Colombo. Hey everyone, welcome to another sit down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. All is very good, very blessed on this end. As always, my friends, I give all the praise, honor, glory, and thanksgiving to our God for that. Well, you've been enjoying this series we're doing on the 50 most significant Mafia Cosa Nostra bosses, or people I would say, they're not all bosses, in the last 100 years in this country. And we did Tony Accardo last. People loved that, enjoyed that. We know that by the comments and messages that we got. We did Carlo Gambino. Really, we got 1 million views on that so far, so people are really enjoying it. I told you we're going to do all 50. We're going to do 2 a month until we run out. There's 2 on there that you're very familiar with. My dad, Sonny Franzese, myself, Michael Franzese. The artist put us on there. I didn't expect that, but we're there. You're certainly not going to hear more about me, that I promise. Maybe on my father. There's a little more insight to him than you might be aware of. But today we're going to do somebody that's very close to me. He was a mentor of mine, somebody that I really loved, and was very close to until the tragic ending that many of you know about. And of course, his name is Joe Colombo. And I really cared for the guy. When my dad went to prison, he was my mentor. I knew him just about all my life. My dad was his underboss. I knew his family, wonderful people. And it was really hurtful and disappointing and a shock to me because it was probably definitely the second attack, I would say, that really opened my eyes about that life. Now, did I continue and become part of it? Yes, I did. But it was certainly something that had a real impact on me, people, and we'll get into that. But I want to talk about it. My friend Joe Colombo, my former friend Joe Colombo, I was very friendly with his sons. They're both gone now, Anthony and Joey Jr.
That helps more than you know.
His son Christopher now and I are friends. Good guy, really good guy. And, I just want to do it justice. And, here's the thing, people. Some people say, Michael, why are you glorifying the mob? I'm not glorifying the mob life. I left the life. I've talked about it plenty. But there were guys in there that I really loved, I really cared for. And they weren't all bad guys, Again, age-old question, why do good people do bad things? Well, there's reasons for that. I'm not going to get into all that, ideology again, all the, the stuff that goes with it. But I really cared for these guys, and I love them. I talk about them as honestly as I possibly can, especially the ones that I knew. I'll never forget the day, one day when I was on the Italian-American Civil Rights line that we were picketing in front of the FBI building. I got into a scuffle with a cop. I threw a punch at him, and a bunch of cops jumped on me, and they were hitting me with the billy clubs, and they were really giving me a beat. And they picked me up and brought me across the street, 3rd Avenue, busy street in Manhattan. And they threw me into the paddy wagon. Well, Joe Colombo was there, and he had the entire line, thousands of people surround the paddy wagon. He wouldn't let them take me away. And for about 2 hours, he negotiated with the cops. And finally, he looked into the paddy wagon. I was handcuffed, and he said, "Don't worry about it. Go to the police station with them. I got it handled." And I went to the station with them. They booked me, but within a short period of time, Barry Slotnick, who was the attorney for the league and for Joe Colombo, he came in, got me out with no bail, and later on the case was dismissed. So Joe Colombo, really one of my major arrests at that time, he was the champion for me, and I'll never forget that day. I really mean that. And I love the guy, like I said. So we're going to get into it. It's a fascinating story, really. But something I think you're really going to enjoy. And understand something, again, this is number 3 of 50, and we're going to do it every 2 weeks, like I said, so that you need to subscribe, not to miss it. Subscribe to the channel. We have many people jumping on, mainly for this series, I would say. A lot of people are, but hopefully because you've enjoyed what I've done for the last couple of years also. So go watch the other 2 previous ones. I want your feedback. We would love it. Let's get into it. My subject of the day, Joe Colombo. Growing up in Brooklyn myself, I understand how the streets can really shape a man. Joe Colombo was born on June 16, 1923, in Brooklyn, to Italian immigrant parents. His father, Anthony Colombo, wasn't just any man. He was connected to what we called the life. The family lived in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn at 186 Columbia Street, a tough neighborhood that would later become a stronghold for what we would be known as the Colombo crime family. And as you know, I was very much a part of it. Red Hook in the 1920s was a maze of dockyards, warehouses, and tenement buildings. The smell of salt water mixed with cooking from Italian kitchens and the sounds of longshoremen working the docks, they filled the air. The Colombo family's apartment was above a small grocery store owned by Joe's mother's family, typical of the immigrant experience where families lived and worked together just to survive at that time. Anthony Colombo had immigrated from the town of Potenza in southern Italy in 1908, bringing with him old world traditions and connections. Joe's mother, Catherine Colombo de Gioia, she came from Naples like me, Napoli. And their marriage in 1920 united 2 families with very deep ties to their Italian heritage. This heritage would later play a crucial role in Joe's approach to community leadership. The young Joe grew up during Prohibition, watching his father navigate both the legitimate and shadowy sides of life. Anthony Colombo worked as a milkman, but he was also involved in bootlegging operations, and that was a common path for many Italian immigrants that were trying to make it in America during those tough days. The family wasn't wealthy, but they weren't struggling like many others during the Depression, thanks to Anthony's various enterprises that he had. In 1938, when Joe was just, I think it was 15 years old, his father was found murdered in his car on President Street in Brooklyn. And obviously, a very tragic event for Joey. This wasn't a random killing. In our world, it never is. The murder remained unsolved, but those in the know understood it was connected to a dispute over a gambling territory. This moment, this single event would shape Joe's entire future. You see, in our world, losing a father like that, it changes you. I'm sure that's the same in every world, but in our world, seeing your father get murdered, it's tough. I mean, me just seeing my father go to prison, it shaped, the future of my thoughts of the things that I would do. It caused me to drop out of school. And, it hardens you to a degree. It really does. Even at a young age, Joe showed some remarkable loyalty to family and an understanding of the importance of taking care of those close to him. The early exposure to violence and criminal elements, it shaped a worldview that would later make it impossible for him to fully escape that life, even when he tried to legitimize himself. And he really did. Joey was different than a lot of the guys on the street. He really was. He was innovative in that regard.
My friends, I know something about having power. Whether it's on the streets or in the media, it's all about who controls the narrative. And right now, the mainstream media is trying to control yours whether you realize it or not. I've been using this platform called Ground News, and it's completely changed how I look at the news. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Remember the Hunter Biden pardon story? How can we forget it? It was everywhere. Well, over 1,000 news sources covered that same story, but watch what happens when you compare headlines from the different outlets. You see how each one spins it differently? That's what makes Ground News different. They're the only platform that lets you see exactly how the media machine works, and yes, it is a machine. They break down the political bias of every source, they show you which stories are being buried by different sides, and this is crucial. They expose who actually owns these news organizations, and that makes a difference, a big difference in how it's reported. In today's world, you can't afford to be in the dark. Ground News gives you something invaluable, and that is the ability to see through the smoke and mirrors and the gaslighting of mainstream media. Right now, you can get the same tools I use for half price. Just go to ground.news/MF or scan this QR code where you'll get 40% off their premium Vantage plan. Come on, that's less than a cup of coffee for the same tools I use to stay informed. You know, with everything that's happening in our country right now, so much going on, you need to see the full picture, not just what they want you to see. So don't wait on this. Take control of your information today. You want to be in the know the right way? Get to Ground News. It's an offer that you shouldn't refuse.
Before Joe Colombo became who you know him as,
oh, look at these
he served
pillars.
his country in World War II, and I want you to understand that. Guys in that life were very patriotic. They may not have liked the Department of Justice, but they defended our country. Many guys got medals of honor. Many guys had tattoos of what they accomplished in the war. They were very patriotic. They didn't like cops, and they didn't like the Department of Justice and the FBI and all of that, but they loved the country. And that may be hard for some of you to understand. Hey, right now, I love this country. I really do. I'm concerned with politics because I'm concerned about the direction of the country for my kids and my grandkids. That's what it's all about. But Joey enlisted in the United States Army in 1942. His service number, 325-88471. And he was assigned to the 11th Airborne Division. He was stationed in the Pacific Theater, specifically in the Philippines, where he served as a supply sergeant. A position that, you know what, later on it would prove valuable in understanding logistics and organization. Joey was a smart guy. Those who served with him described him as a natural leader, a person that can get things done even when the official channel failed. During his service, Colombo earned several commendations. I want you to listen to that. You know, like a lot of other guys, he served honorably, including the Asian Pacific Campaign Medal and the Philippine Liberation Medal. His time in the service, particularly in supply management, taught him some very valuable lessons about moving goods efficiently and maintaining precise records. But let me tell you something about coming back from war. It changes your perspective. The skills you learn, the brotherhood, the organization, these things stick with you. Don't think they just go away. You know, former military suffer from PTSD. It's what you bring back. There's a lot of negatives that you can bring back, also a lot of positives. The New York he returned to in 1945 was booming with post-war opportunity. The GI Bill offered veterans like Colombo chances for education and business loans, though he would choose a different path. The city was experiencing some massive economic growth with construction projects everywhere and unions gaining unprecedented power. Spheres of influence that would later become crucial to Joe Colombo's operations, as well as many of us, you know, who also got involved in unions and union control. After returning home in 1945, Joe started working various jobs. He got into the milk delivery business, following in his father's legitimate footsteps. But it wasn't just about milk. During this time, he was building connections. And these connections went throughout Brooklyn, particularly in Bensonhurst and Red Hook. And, you know, these were mob strongholds. He married Lucille Faiello in 1944, and they had 5 children together. And I knew Lucille personally. What a wonderful, wonderful woman she was. I mean it. You know, good wife, great mother to her children, just an all-around good person. I mean, I really loved her, cared for her very much. Family meant everything to Joe, and providing for them was his primary motivation, and I really believe that. You know, he wanted to provide for his family. That came first. It was before everything. Many of us felt the same way. Me, for sure. By 1946, he was also running a small gambling operation and working as a collector for local loan sharks. His reputation for efficiency and, when necessary, toughness, he was a tough guy, it started growing. What set him apart was his business acumen. He understood that intimidation alone wasn't sustainable. You needed to be smart about money. And people, let me tell you something. In the Colombo family back then, we had 115 made guys that took the oath. Out of the 115, 20 of us were earners. 20 of us really understood. It wasn't all about violence. It was about knowing how to use the life to benefit us in business. But it wasn't a lot of us that were able to do that. Those that could, you know, racketeers we call them, those that couldn't, more gangsters. But I always said this, if you were a racketeer, you had to be a gangster also, because you're going to be called upon to do certain things. You had to have both skills. But the gangsters, they weren't really qualified. They didn't understand how to use the life to benefit them. And Joe Colombo was one guy that did. You know, he showed remarkable entrepreneurial skills. Understanding the importance of legitimate business, facades, and building real community connections. He was really good at that. You know, my father always said, you know, go legit. That's where it is. My father didn't really understand it that well, because my father was more of a street tough guy. But he always said, it's all about legitimacy, Mike. That's where you got to go. But his involvement in loan sharking and gambling operations often led to violence, even though he tried to present a more sophisticated image. But, you know, you're in that business. Sometimes you got to do the things that you're called upon to do it. There's no getting away from it. Let me be clear about something. In our thing, nothing happens by accident. Colombo didn't just stumble into the life. By the early 1950s, he was working with the Profaci family, and that was the family before Joe Colombo took it over. And Joe Profaci, he was very proficient boss too. He controlled his territory since the end of a war we had back in 1931. And he saw something in young Colombo. He saw something that he viewed as being very valuable. He saw leadership potential, strategic thinking, and most important, again we're going to say it, loyalty. Colombo officially became a made man. He took the oath in 1952. He was sponsored by his top regime, Charlie Lemon's Mineo. And this was a time of significant change in the New York underworld. You know, we call it Mafia, Cosa Nostra. The Kefauver hearings had brought unwanted attention to our activities, and smart operators like Colombo understood the need to be more sophisticated in how we conducted business. You know, anytime you have an organization, it can't go just by violence and street thugs and all that stuff alone. You had to run it like an operation, like an organization. You know, Luciano, we're going to get into him. He was the one that put the commission together, that made us understand this isn't all about violence. We gotta, you know, we gotta get ourselves into the fabric of society. We gotta have political connections. You gotta have legitimate business. You gotta, you know, be in control of certain things, politics. If you wanted to survive as an organization, you had to do that. Joe Colombo understood it. By 1953, he had established several legitimate businesses, and I was familiar with them, including he had construction companies, he had restaurants. One of his most successful ventures was a real estate firm that actually operated legally, at least most of the time. And this approach, mixing legitimate business with other activities, would become his trademark. He was great at that. I'll tell you this, and I know this from personal experience. Earning your button, becoming a made man, it's not just about being tough. It's about being smart, being reliable, and understanding the delicate balance of power. Colombo, he had excelled at all three, no doubt. He showed remarkable ability to establish and maintain legitimate businesses, providing real jobs and opportunities in the community. He was always a community man. He always cared about his neighborhood, like many of us did, like all of us did. That's why I said there was no crime in our neighborhoods. No, we took care of people. We took care of the businesses. Believe me when I tell you we did. You know, MS-13, they come into our neighborhood, forget about it. They're dead. They're gone. This Tren de Agua, whatever, gone. No crime in our neighborhood. You wouldn't have to worry about it. They'd be gone. As tough as you think they are, trust me, we would have gotten rid of them. You know, these legitimate businesses often served as fronts for more sinister operations, of course, including sometimes extortion was involved, sometimes money laundering. It was part of what we did, you know. We didn't respect always what the government said we had to do. That was it. We didn't always respect. You know, I got to tell you something. Everything that's illegal is not always immoral. Just because the government says you can't do it doesn't mean that it's immoral all the time. Let me tell you, and I'm not talking about extortion, but gambling operations. You know, we used to go to jail for gambling. Now what? The government is involved in gambling. Pro sports is involved in gambling. We went to jail because why? We didn't pay taxes. They claimed we used to beat people up. You know how rare that was? It was so rare. Trust me when I tell you that, you know? But, you know, so again, we didn't respect a lot of what the government said we had to do. That was the bottom line. By the late 1950s, Colombo was proving himself in ways that made people really take notice. He became involved in union activities, particularly in the construction industry, where he showed a real talent for negotiation. Though to be honest, these negotiations, they would involve more than just talk. You know, that's the way it went in that life. Not outside of the life, but in the life. The period between 1959 and 1961 was very crucial. The Profaci family was facing internal strife. The Gallo brothers, Joey, Albert, and Larry, they were becoming increasingly dissatisfied with Joe Profaci's leadership. Everybody thought Joe Profaci was a selfish guy. They felt he was demanding too much money in tribute while giving too little in return. And this conflict eventually would evolve into what we call the Profaci-Gallo War. I'm intimately aware of that. My father was very much involved in that. I told a story about how my dad left us at my grandmother's house. He was gone for, weeks during the war. He didn't want to come home and possibly bring any heat to the family. I relate some incidents. I won't get into it now, but I really remember that war. Here's where Colombo showed his strategic genius. Initially, he appeared to be on the side of the gallows, even participating in the kidnapping of several Profaci loyalists. But in a very surprise move, he switched sides. He warned Profaci of an attempt on his life. This decision would prove later to be very crucial to his rise in power. During this time, Colombo expanded his influence into new territories. He established connections in Manhattan's garment history, very important. He gained interest in several unions. He developed a relationship with political figures that would prove very valuable later on. Some of them I was very aware of. You know, Colombo demonstrated exceptional strategic thinking, and he had a real ability to navigate complex situations within the family. Very important. You gotta be, if you're gonna be a good boss, you gotta know how to navigate complex situations within the family, because they always come up. But you know, his betrayal of the gallows, while strategically it was very sound, it was the right move. It did cause some in the family to question his loyalty later on. Now, you know, 1962 really marked a turning point for Joe Colombo. With Joe Profaci's death from cancer, there was a power vacuum in the family. And initially, Joseph Mayocco took over as boss, with Colombo as his right-hand man. When Mayocco and Bonanno, Joe Bonanno, they plotted to kill Carlo Gambino and Tommy Lucchese, and they needed somebody to handle it, so they gave the contract to Joe Colombo. And people, when you get a contract, you don't get paid for it. This is your duty, this is your obligation. You become a made man, part of the deal. You're given a contract, there's no payment involved in that. You got to do what you're told to do. But Joey was smart in this regard. Instead of carrying out the order, Colombo did something that was really unprecedented at the time. He went directly to Gambino and he exposed the plot. This move led to Mayocco's forced retirement, and Bonanno eventually, he ran away. He came back later on, and the commission allowed him to live because he was a boss, but they said, you're out of here. And that's when he moved to Phoenix, Arizona. He moved to save his life. He stayed in New York, he's a dead man. And as a reward for all of this, at just 41 years old, Colombo was appointed the head of what would become known as the Colombo crime family, making him the youngest crime boss in the nation at that time. You know, under his leadership, the family's operations, they expanded significantly. He moved into new territories, including Staten Island and Florida. He understood the importance of diversification. He pushed the family into legitimate businesses while maintaining the traditional rackets. And he was masterful at this. One of his most significant innovations was his approach to law enforcement. Unlike many of his predecessors, he believed in strategic cooperation when it served his purposes. Now, don't get this wrong. He wasn't cooperating with the government and putting people in trouble. These were strategic cooperations. In other words, hey, let me tell you where this gambling operation is, you know, so you lay off of all the others. But he alerted the gambling operation, or maybe it was a rival play. You know, he wasn't, I don't want you to start calling him rats. Everybody loves to throw that term around. But you know what? We did work strategically at times with law enforcement to benefit us. Not to benefit an individual, but to benefit the families. The same way we did with politicians. So don't start saying the wrong thing about Joe Colombo. He wasn't a snitch, he wasn't a rat, he didn't do anything like that. He was smart. He developed a relationship with certain public officials, and he understood the value of appearing cooperative even while maintaining the family's criminal enterprise. So I would say his leadership brought stability to the family after many years of internal conflict, and his business acumen led to significant prosperity for many guys. His youth and his rapid rise did create resentment, man. In that life, when you're one of the young guys, I know this from experience. You got a lot of resentment. Guys that have been there a long time. Oh, you know, how come this guy, Johnny come lately, and all of a sudden he's the boss, all of a sudden he's a capo, all of a sudden he's making all of this money. I had to deal with that a lot. And Joe Colombo, as the youngest boss, he had to deal with it, but he knew how to navigate. But there was resentment among the older members for sure, and his attempts to play both sides of the law might have eventually contributed to his downfall. I think so, because some people might have looked at it the wrong way. We'll get into that. Now this is where Joe Colombo really broke the mold. And man, I'm so familiar, this was my era, I'm so familiar with this, you know, so I can justify everything that I'm saying here with, you know, sound evidence. In April 1970, he founded the Italian-American Civil Rights League. The catalyst was the arrest by the FBI of his son Joey Jr. on a federal charge, a BS federal charge. And people, I remember this day. I'm in my house. My dad had just gone to prison not too long before that. And I got a phone call from Joey Brancato, one of my dad's guys. And he said, Mike, get down to 3rd Avenue and 69th Street. We're going to be picketing the FBI. What? Joe Colombo, Joey Jr., who I knew well, was indicted on some BS charge, he told me. And we're going to be picketing the FBI. We're not going to let the FBI harass Italian Americans anymore. So Joey, instead of handling it the old way, Colombo did something unprecedented. He went public. He himself went public. And you don't do that. You know, who does that in that life? You're not supposed to do that. All right, John Gotti, you think about it. You know, Al Capone, you think about it. But this wasn't good at that time. You know, you tried to stay in the shadows. He didn't care. He had enough. He said, you know what? The FBI is defaming us. They're harassing us. They're going after our families. And they were. Who was a better victim than my family? What they did to my father during that time in the 60s, forget about it. They had 7 agencies following us 24 hours a day. I got into scuffles with them. We couldn't even go eat in peace. My father getting arrested every other day, going to trial 3 times, so following me to the baseball field, all this kind of stuff. They were harassing us. There's no question about it. So he organized protests outside the FBI offices claiming Italian Americans were being harassed, and rightfully so, and stereotyped. The League's first rally at Colombo Circle drew an estimated 50,000 people. Straight scoop. I was there, 50,000 people, at least. There might have been more. And this wasn't just fellow connected guys. These were legitimate businessmen. They were politicians, and they were everyday Italian Americans that were tired of being accosted or associated, I should say, with crime and discrimination. Many legit Italians, they were upset. You had a vowel at the end of your name. You were mafia. You know how many times we heard that? You're Italian, vowel at the end of your name, you're mafia. And people didn't like it, so they were jumping on board this league in record numbers. The league achieved real results. They pressured the FBI to stop using the terms mafia and La Cosa Nostra in official communications. They stopped them. They got the producers of The Godfather, you know this, to agree not to use these terms in the film. I was there throughout all of this, man. And yes, he did some things that were just amazing, Joe Colombo. They even managed to get Frank Sinatra to headline a benefit concert at Madison Square Garden, and Sammy Davis Jr. also. They were all there. They came to support Joe Colombo and the Italian American Civil Rights League. But here's what many don't know. The League also did legitimate community work, real legitimate community work. They helped small business get loans. They assisted elderly Italian Americans with housing issues, and they provided scholarships to Italian American students. And they even had camps, day camps, for kids. At its peak, they had offices in multiple cities, and they had over 45,000 dues-paying members, and people wanted to belong to this. It was a great league. I loved it. I saw it as a way to help my dad. I was on that picket line every day. I told you, I got arrested off the line. The first and only guy, I think, to get arrested off the line. No doubt about it. I was into it 1,000%. I believed in it. I had lived throughout the harassment, and I wanted this league to help my father. And I love Joe Colombo because he organized this. I have to say this. Colombo showed genuine leadership in fighting discrimination, and he brought real benefits to the Italian American community. No doubt. People loved him. But, you know, there's always a flip side. His high-profile activities and the media attention brought unwanted scrutiny to both legitimate and illegitimate operations, violating one of the fundamental rules of Cosa Nostra, and that is staying out of the spotlight. You know, people, I have to tell you, there were a lot of guys, made guys, on the line that were picketing because Joe Colombo wanted them there. They were upset. You know, guys that might have been unknown, they became known by being on the line. The FBI was recording everything, taking photographs. You know how upset the FBI was? They would throw water balloons down on us, eggs down on us, you know, when we were picketing on the line. I'm telling you, they were upset about this. So did they want to get revenge at some point? You bet they did. And eventually, unfortunately, they did. And this is where things really got interesting. Joe Colombo became more than just a boss. He became a celebrity of sorts. He appeared on television shows like the Joe Franklin Show, a very popular show, late night show at that time. He gave interviews to major newspapers. In 1971, he even went before the New York State Legislature and testified about civil rights. Almost unheard of. Behind the scenes, though, the family's criminal enterprises, they continued. They controlled the unions, we did. We ran gambling operations. We maintained our interest in construction and waste management. Colombo developed a very sophisticated system of buffers between himself and these activities. He used multiple layers of intermediaries. It was smart, we had to do that. During this period, he also expanded the family's legitimate holdings. They owned restaurants, we had construction companies, we even had a chain of jewelry stores. And when I say we, I wasn't a maid guy at that time. I was just becoming a recruit shortly after that. But you know, it was they at the time, and then it became we. Some of these businesses were actually profitable on their own merits, just by being a legitimate business. And that showed Colombo's genuine business talent. But this dual life, it created a lot of tension. Law enforcement, they increased their surveillance on many of us. And some of the other families became concerned because there was a lot of attention that he was drawing, Carlo Gambino in particular. I think he warned Joey about the dangers of his high profile. And he didn't warn him or tell him, you know, you're going to get hit like some people are saying. He just sat down with him and said, Joey, you know, this may not be good for you. Because remember, Carlo Gambino, he operated in the shadows. He never wanted anybody to know who he was. He ruled his family for 20 years and died in his home. Never even did prison time. He wanted to stay in the background. But, you know, Joe Colombo, he just approached it differently. You know, his media savvy and his public speaking abilities brought a lot of attention to legitimate issues facing Italian Americans at that time. You know, but also his very public profile violated traditional organized crime principles of operating in the shadows, and it brought a lot of unwanted heat, you know, mainly on himself. You know, in 1971, that marked a very pivotal moment when Joe Colombo's influence extended all the way to Hollywood. Paramount Pictures was preparing to film The Godfather, and I think I've told this story before, and this caught the league's attention right away. We thought it was going to be another bad movie, you know, depicting us as bad people and, you know, slandering legitimate Italian Americans. So let me tell you something about this situation that most people don't know. It wasn't just about the movie, it was about power, respect, and changing how Italian Americans were portrayed in entertainment. The initial conflict started when word got out about the film's production. The league immediately began applying pressure, organizing boycotts. I remember I was demonstrating. We were demonstrating at Paramount's New York offices. Joe Colombo ordered us all there. And they were concerned, and rightfully so, from their perspective, about another Hollywood production stereotyping Italian Americans. We had every right to think that. They were stereotyping us as criminals. And then what happens? Al Ruddy comes in, the producer of The Godfather. This is where things really got interesting. Instead of hiding behind studio walls, Ruddy did something very unexpected. He reached out directly to Joe Colombo. They arranged a meeting at the Park Sheraton Hotel. The Park Sheraton is where we had all the meetings for the Italian American Civil Rights League. We used to have one a week. And that was the same place where Albert Anastasia had been killed years earlier. You know that story. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone at the time. Colombo and Ruddy's negotiations were fascinating. Colombo didn't demand that the movie be stopped. He was smarter than that. Instead, he had specific requests, demands, I would say. Remove the words Mafia and Cosa Nostra from the script. It was originally in the script, both of those words. Ensure that the film portrayed Italian-American family values positively, and hire league members as extras and technical advisors. Now, you have to say one thing. The family was shown in a good light. Everybody said, wow, the family values there. You know, the integrity that Don Corleone had, later Michael Corleone. Yes, it was a mob family, we get all of that, but you gotta admit, that film was romanticized in a great degree, and it was because of Joe Colombo's efforts. Rudy agreed to these terms, and something remarkable, really remarkable happened. Colombo became actually an unofficial consultant to the film. And the league supported it. We even held a benefit premiere of the movie. I remember that. All the proceeds went to funding a hospital fund that we had. This was Colombo at his diplomatic best, turning a potential real confrontation into a collaboration that served his community's interests and really served our purpose as well. People loved The Godfather. I remember mob guys, when the movie came out, they walked differently down the street. They dressed differently. They held their heads differently. It really had an impact even on the guys on the street. You know, but Italian Americans, they enjoyed it. It was one of the greatest films of all time. Let's face it. What many people didn't realize was that this intervention actually helped the film. The attention brought publicity, and the authenticity added by having real Italian Americans involved enhanced the movie's credibility. We had some guys, Lenny Montana, he was one of us. He played Luca Brasi. A couple of the guys, you know, they were one of us, but they were authentic. The Godfather went on to become one of the greatest films ever made. And ironically, its success helped cement many of the very stereotypes that Colombo had fought against. It did. It had a reverse effect in many ways. But you got to admit, Colombo showed remarkable diplomatic skills, transforming potential conflict into mutual benefit through negotiation rather than force. Colombo's approach demonstrated how activism could achieve practical results through dialogue rather than just confrontation. What was he going to do? Threaten Paramount, threaten the studios, close it down? It would have been huge. It would have been a mess. He knew there was only one way to handle it. He handled it the right way. Modern leaders can really learn from his ability to find a win-win solution in a seemingly adversarial situation. Use influence constructively rather than destructively. Transform opposition into collaboration. Protect your community interests while not. This is what you gotta know how to do. The agreement, though, has bad points too. It ultimately contributed to glamorizing and mythologizing the very lifestyle Colombo claimed to be fighting against. It did that. Come on. You know, it romanticized our life in a big way. You know, and this highlights the complex nature, think about it, of compromise and unintended consequences. When you're trying to balance legitimate and illegitimate, it's a tough compromise. You can learn from this, understanding the long-term impact of short-term victories, recognizing how success can sometimes undermine stated goals, the dangers of compromising principles for practical gains, and how
Billie Eilish reported me to ICE and got me deported from the US.
No one is illegal on stolen land.
These people are always so much worse than you could possibly ever imagine. Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to hell. Just wanted to quickly say a big thank you to everybody who watched my last video and left me a really lovely and supportive comment. I felt very nervous when I hit publish on that about the response that I would potentially get, but all of your responses were so beautiful, and it definitely made me feel a lot better and a lot less alone about this whole situation and many other things that have happened. So thank you, my little cherubs. Also, just a quick note before we get into this video, I am currently running a 20% off sale on my tea company, Lions Tea Exchange, which I will link in the description box, for my summer flavors, so root beer, strawberry lemonade oolong, white peach, and mango black, as well as bourbon barrel chai and my apple cider teas, because I would like to move some inventory so that I can introduce some more flavors to all of you. So go to my website, it is linked in the description box, go buy yourself a box of tea, the 20% off is applied at checkout. So once again, due to the doom and gloom of what is going on in the world at the moment, and also a little bit because of the doom and gloom of the last video that I made, I wanted to talk about something that genuinely made me laugh in this video, and not because it by itself is particularly funny, but because of the sheer stupidity of it all. At this point, I am sure the vast majority of you are familiar with the singer-songwriter Billie Eilish. Eilish, like many of her fellow celebrities, has made a number of very polarizing political statements over the years. She recently took aim at billionaires and started a weird feud with Elon Musk.
I love you all, but there's a few people in here that have a lot more money than me. And, if you're a billionaire, why are you a billionaire? No hate, but yeah, give your money away. Love you guys. Thank you so much.
It will never stop being funny to me that these people think that billionaires probably have liquid billions in their bank accounts. Because apparently nobody understands how assets or investments work. Also sort of funny when a millionaire like Billie Eilish takes a stab at billionaires because she can't go after the millionaires in her orbit or take a stab in her own wealth. So there is that. Eilish also made comments in support of Kamala Harris during the 2024 election, and she's on and off commented on other social issues as well. But her newest series of comments happened a few weeks ago at the Grammys, and that is basically the origin point of our hilarious story. Many actors, actresses, and celebrities have taken these award shows recently as opportunities to make political statements. Almost all of them have said something about Minnesota and ICE, and probably some of them have said that we're living under a dictatorship, but I imagine...
But the guy is a convicted felon or convicted rapist, he's a pedophile, he's the worst human being. If we're relying on this guy's morality for the most powerful country in the world, then we're all in a lot of trouble. This is for her, this is for people in the United States who are terrorized and scared today. I know I'm one of them.
But during her acceptance speech, Billie Eilish also took aim at ICE, going the extra step and saying that nobody is illegal on stolen land. Okay.
No one is illegal on stolen land. What to say and what to do right now, and I feel really hopeful in this room, and I feel like we just need to keep fighting and speaking up and protesting, and our voices really do matter, and the people matter. And
yes, very good try, but this is not how borders work. All land acquisition. I mean it when I say that nobody should be taking cues about politics from this baby person who makes repetitive music. Anyway, the reason that I bring you back to Eilish's comments at the Grammys is because they have set off a chain of hilarious, albeit alarming events that have culminated in Eilish apparently getting an Australian journalist to the US and sent back to Australia because he said if no one is illegal, then you won't mind me moving into your house over there, Billy old pal. And I will come back to the details of this absurd situation in a little bit, so just hold on. But I would first like to explain what happened in the immediate aftermath of Billie Eilish's speech. But actually, before we do that, I really quickly just want to tell you about my favorite sponsor on this channel, and that is Dreams Sleep Hot Chocolate, which is just so friggin' good. Pajama Pants on, a great book acquired. There's only one thing missing from tonight's lineup, and I would say that is my Dream Sleep Hot Chocolate. It has been very well established on this channel that I have well and truly built a dream into my nighttime routine, and I'm not remotely mad about it. Sometimes I don't really feel like having a hot drink before bed because I live in Texas, that's self-explanatory, so I do opt for the dream capsules, which I find are just as good as the drink. I take a couple of these and I am off to sleep well and truly. But tonight we are once again going to make the hot chocolate version, and it's very easy to make. Grab your mug, choose your milk or water, I guess. In the microwave it goes, or on the stove. I made mine too hot, I can already tell. Put your dream hot chocolate in the mug, use your Dream frother to mix the concoction, and away you go. Dream is one of my favorite sponsors on this channel, and I can genuinely not say enough good things about them. I love this product because it's made with really great ingredients like L-theanine and magnesium and melatonin, although they do have melatonin-free options if you don't want melatonin. I drink this anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour before bed, and I like the fact that Dream gives me a really calm send-off to sleep. I stay asleep, and then I wake up without feeling disgusting and groggy. I wake straight up and I'm out of bed. If you are somebody who struggles to fall asleep and then stay asleep, I genuinely believe that Dream will be able to help you on that journey. And it also helps that it tastes really, really good. So my little love bugs, if you are finally ready to take this step into better sleep, then click the link in the description or go to shopee.com/SydneyW. And for a limited time, get up to 35% off when you use my code SydneyW. After her statements about stolen land, a Native American tribe called the Tongva, which I'm probably saying wrong, sorry about that. Anyway, they came forward and confirmed that Billie Eilish's $3 million Los Angeles home is on their ancestral territory. Of course they did. They basically said that celebrities should be more precise if they want to invoke Indigenous history for moral statements. The tribe went on to say that Eilish had not contacted them directly regarding her property, and they were displeased that she had not referenced their tribe by name when referring to the stolen land that her house is on. Bro, what is this timeline? On its own, this is genuinely hilarious to me because, one, what a way to get called out, and number two, it's like you virtue signal for a group of people who in turn call you out for said virtue signaling because you're not doing it correctly. Sometimes I really love modernity. But shortly after this statement was released, a California law firm reached out to the tribe and offered to help evict Billie Eilish from her home, given that she acknowledged that the land is stolen and therefore probably fair game, or something. Because of course they did. Now, to be clear, the law firm owner did follow up here saying that his offer was in fact tongue-in-cheek, but he did also say that Eilish's admission that she lives on stolen land gives the tribe a rightful action for possession as the true owners of the property. He also said in another interview that it's incredibly hypocritical of Hollywood elites to preach from their gated and guarded property, which is extremely true. And all of this rolls us around to where we are now. And I find all of this so funny because it is so reminiscent of a situation that I was in back in 2019. My OG community members and subscribers will remember this, but those of you who are new do not know the Sydney law. But do you guys remember when I got detained and interrogated by the FBI because of Jim Jeffries? Well, an extremely similar situation unfolded for a fellow Australian journalist called Drew Pavlou, whose name I might be saying wrong, sorry if I am. And look, Drew, honestly, while this is very funny, and I'm very glad that you have found this humorous yourself, I don't know what you expected here. You were sort of asking for this outcome, my guy. Essentially, after Eilish's comments, Pavlou tweeted that he had decided he was going to move into Billie Eilish's multi-million-dollar Malibu beachfront mansion because no human being is illegal on stolen land. Thank you, Billie, for your generosity.
Big news, everybody. I've decided today to move into Billie Eilish's $6 million Malibu beachside mansion. She announced today at the Grammys that no human being is illegal on stolen land.
No one is illegal on stolen land.
So I'm going to be making the trip to America. I'm packing my bags right away. I'm looking forward to just taking possession of her $6 million Malibu mansion. No human being is illegal. So I want to thank everybody who believed in me on this journey. I really can't wait to move in. It's now my house. I want to thank Billie Eilish as well for her generosity.
He followed up by saying he'll actually do it if someone shouts his ticket to the United States, which led to him setting up a GoFundMe, which was deleted by the platform, and then he set up a Give Send Go, and he raised just under $6,000 Australian, which I don't know what that is in USD. Sorry, I'm not going to do the conversion. I am not a calculator. Interestingly, Pavlou wasn't even the first person to do this. A GB News reporter called Ben Leo reportedly went to the front of Eilish's compound to show that nobody is illegal on stolen land. Like, she likes to remind us.
Let us in, please, Billie. We are here because this is stolen land, Billie, and we think we should be given access to your quite lovely $3 million mansion. Here we go. This little place. Bins are out. It's bin collection day. First of all, isn't that ironic? Massive gates keeping people out. I thought Billie didn't believe in borders. Well, according to the driveway, Billie does believe in borders. She believes in massive gates keeping people out. A couple of cameras up there as well.
This is unironically how you get tased and beaten by giant former military men. Now, because I read your comments, I do feel like I can gauge what most of you are going to feel about this GB News segment, and I'm sure a portion of you are going to be like, yes, this is so funny, suck it, Billie Eilish, you're a giant hypocrite. And then I know that some of you are going to be like, yeah, this is funny, I can see the humor in this, but ultimately actually going to her home probably takes this too far. And frankly, I can very much see that perspective. I don't know, at least she has a big old security fence to keep everybody else out. But maybe I'm just spitballing here, maybe all of this drama and this happening is kind of what set the stage for what happened to Kowloon, you know, in the last few days. Because, my dear baby birds, after a little bit of silence, we finally got these series of tweets. Billie Eilish got me deported from the US. I spent 30 hours in custody at LAX trying to explain to the agents that my SHIT posts about moving into her mansion on stolen land were just a joke. Her lawyers seem to have actually compiled a dossier on me because the agents were asking me about my entire history as an activist, opposed to the Chinese government, whether I had ever plotted to assassinate Chinese Communist Party officials. Drew, what are you getting yourself into, guy? It was legitimately insane. I suffered for my art as an online SHIT poster. I was victimized and martyred by Billie Eilish. Oh, you guys do not understand the flashbacks that this is giving me. Seriously.
Billie Eilish reported me to ICE and got me deported from the US. Honestly, I can't even be really mad because it's kind of funny. But basically, I was joking online that I was going to fly to America and move into America. It's obviously a joke. It's obviously a meme. And I can stop my connection and held for like 30 hours. Literally 30 hours. How do you know Billie Eilish? Do you intend to press it? No, of course not, man. It's a joke. It was like a meme that I came up with on Instagram. And I can hold for 30 hours and basically escorted onto a plane by armed guards, sent back to Australia. And I think it's actually amazing performance art. I managed to get Billie Eilish, Hollywood celebrities, left-wingers, liberals, to agree with ICE, to agree with border control. They suddenly support deportation because they don't like my news, they don't like me as a person. Who else can you go to this far? That I was able to actually sit in a cell for 30 hours, draw that pay, just to prove that Billie Eilish. And I guess at the end of the day,
Oh, I get the reference. It's one of her song titles. Being a bad guy. The radio bash for a while there. So ultimately, it seems that border security at LAX airport got Drew Kowloon on a technicality as far as his visa went. I imagine that the visa waivers, the ESTAs, thing. Anyway, I feel like he probably came into the country on a tourism visa, and they apparently told him that he needed a business visa because he was scheduled to be on a very big right-wing show on February 19th. So they put him back on a flight and sent him home. And I just have to imagine, having done the Australia to America flight 9 billion times, how utterly miserable this would be. Yeah, you think you can stop over and things. You do 15 hours in the air getting to LAX, and then he had 30 hours reportedly in DHS custody or in border control custody, and another 15 hours later. That is miserable. On February 17th, as well, DHS responded to all of this and said that the claims about Billie Eilish having had an end in this are false. Honestly, I am 95% for me. So crazy reading all of Drew Kowloon's tweets and the way that all this played out. It just reminds me so much of what happened to me in 2019 along with my friend Avi. Again, I'm not sure how many of you remember this, but what happened to me was traumatizing. I cried at the end for hours. So like I mentioned, long story short, my friend Avi did an interview with a fellow Australian who is a comedian whose name is Jeffrey was up the interview deceptively, not knowing that Avi had covertly filmed the whole thing himself, anticipating that Jeffries would do something like this. Avi then went ahead and published the actual interview online with his commentary. Avi was quite upset with being edited in such a way, and so he was saying online that he was going to fly to the United States and crash one of Jim Jeffries' shows and basically confront him about why he did what he did, because Jim Jeffries worked for Comedy Central, Viacom at the time. And so this was kind of a plan that was taking shape, and he said to me, you know, do you want to come with me? And I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun. We landed at LAX, and then we immediately both got detained and separated. They took me this way, and they took me this way. And then I got interrogated by 2 FBI officials with a little badge and everything, and they were asking me these crazy questions about if I was going to get weapons, if I planned on hurting Jim Jeffries, just like weird a weird series of questions around Jim Jeffries and violence, and obviously the answer to all those questions was no. I am not a violent person. I would not do something like that. And I think that similar to Drew Pavlu's experience, I think that the instruction in those cases is to find anything at all to send the person in question back to where they came from. So in Drew's case, it's saying, oh, you're here on the wrong visa. In Avi's case, they found that he'd answered a question incorrectly, I think, on his visa, and so they were like, no, we're going to deny you entry and send you back. But for me, they did not know that I was a citizen, so they could not do anything to me, so they released me into LAX, and I was so traumatic, I cried in the lobby of LAX airport. So again, it does in fact look like people can be illegal on stolen land. Like in Anna's case, I was fine. But the fact that DHS denies the reality of what they are doing is just mental, because why would they be asking some random guy about Billie Eilish and have a whole dossier on him if somebody hadn't called in a tip or asked them to investigate this person? And again, that's the same thing with what happened to Avi and me. Why are you stopping two Australians who don't have any reason to be stopped? You're stopping us to question us about a specific person and specific things that you think we might be doing. And in our case, we found out that the head of Viacom, who employed Jim Jeffries, was, I think, some member of the FBI at some point. I just don't really understand the point of lying about this type of thing, because people are not stupid. We aren't very capable of putting two and two together. Anyway, the funniest part about this Billie Eilish story, to me at least, is that when push comes to shove, this whole nobody is illegal on stolen land thing completely falls in a heap. Billie Eilish's team, or maybe even she did this herself, we don't know, made sure that immigration restrictions were enforced on Pavlu because he made comments about coming to her house that resides on the aforementioned stolen land. He was detained and questioned because he was joking about doing to her what she once done to this country as a whole. Except that in this case, Drew wasn't illegal. He had papers and had a visa, so maybe if he'd just hopped across the southern border, she wouldn't have minded so much. This is sincerely one of my biggest problems with leftist celebrities and all of their virtue signaling. Virtue. Why did I just say it like that? Virtue. Sounds wrong. It is actually okay to admit that borders matter, and gates matter, and your gated communities matter, and feeling safe in your own environment really matters. All of these are things that Billie Eilish and her team made sure were enforced because they matter not just to her, but to the vast majority of us. And when push came to shove, she made sure that a foreign invader could not come into her country, and more specifically and more importantly, could not cross the borders around her own home, and made sure that he was not allowed anywhere near where she lives. And rightly so. The amusing thing here is that I feel like most of us would be like, yeah, that's totally understandable. Like, you don't know who this person is, you don't know what this person has planned, and obviously I don't think that Drew had anything planned. I really do think that he was just mucking around. But she doesn't know that, and she doesn't know the intention that he has when he's talking about doing this, and so the amusing thing is that I think a lot of moderates and people on the right see this kind of behavior and say this is a rational response to someone saying they're going to come to your house. Now, why you don't apply that to the entirety of this nation is confusing and stupid. Like, if we are being honest here, it is madness that this type of a thing cannot be expanded to include national borders and territory that is, in fact, the United States, and keeping people out who have not come here legally. These things matter, and they have always mattered, and it's why a huge portion of us currently support the unfortunateness, I guess, of mass deportations and the complete shutdown of all of America's borders. And in a weird way, I am kind of glad that Drew went ahead and did this, because, as he points out, it really does demonstrate that depending on how you approach a social issue like this, you can swing progressive types around to supporting things that ordinarily they would say are, bigoted and racist and xenophobic and what have you. Billie Eilish's hypocrisy here is so obvious that even Elon Musk tweeted about it, I guess, as part of their ongoing feud. You know, she takes stabs at him and makes fun of him for being a millionaire and insults him, and he takes stabs back. I don't know. Anyway, the celebrity posturing here gets incredibly annoying because it adds unnecessary noise to issues that are already very complex. And while there are some people who really do mean it when they say that we should have wide open borders, Billie Eilish is so clearly not one of these people. So why make these comments at all? Apparently borders do matter when it is her gated compound being invaded. Security matters when it's her privacy and property on the line. And the hypocrisy probably wouldn't bother me so much if they were just more upfront about the double standards that they have. But going ahead and preaching no borders, no walls, no enforcement on a national level while building a gate, a giant gate around your own home and making sure it is enforced, and going to the extent of getting someone refused entry to the country, that is something I can't deal with. That is hypocrisy that just exceeds anything that I can emotionally handle. These people even have armed guards at their own award shows, people designed to keep other people out. Everything they do is saturated with keeping the vast majority of people away from them. But as soon as this applies to the nation as a whole, it is wrong. If nobody is illegal on stolen land, then why did Billie Eilish make damn sure that one guy stayed illegal on hers? And I can answer that question. Because deep down, Billie Eilish and her ilk, other progressives, other celebrities, inherently know that not only property rights, but sovereign borders and maintaining those borders actually really matters. It's just everyone else's borders and everyone else's safety that she's willing to sacrifice for a whole bunch of applause. So in the end, while I do find this situation very funny, I am also glad that somebody was prepared to put themselves in the line of fire, so to speak, in order to demonstrate just how hypocritical people like Billie Eilish, and specifically Billie Eilish, actually is and actually are. These people are really good at talking and patting each other on the back for their incredibly progressive positions, but in actuality, they very much align with how you and I think, but only when it applies to their safety and their property and their borders. Now, on that very happy and pleasant note, and before I open the floor to all of you, this is just a reminder, check out Beam using the link in the description. I freaking love this stuff. I am not joking. I take it most nights because it very much helps me sleep. And so if you are somebody who does struggle to get to sleep or stay asleep, or maybe you just want a little bit of help, absolutely check them out. I genuinely promise, hand on heart, that you won't regret it. Now I open the floor to all of you. What do you all think? Do you think this situation is as funny as I think it is? Do you think that it's actually really unfortunate and what happened to Drew just sucks? Maybe you think both, that it sucks and it's funny. Do you think that it really does go to illustrate just how hypocritical the celebrities, more specifically Billie Eilish, is? Do you think that this was sort of always going to be the case, that they would always take action like this, even making jokes like this on the internet? Do you think that it's right? Do you think that it's wrong? What do you make of the response from VHS? They're lying? Do you think that they're telling the truth? Who would have tipped them off if they are telling the truth? And what do you generally make of this issue overall? As always, if you have made it this far in the video, congratulations. I always like having you along for the full ride. If you are new here and you're not subscribed already and you'd like to see more of me and more of this kind of content, feel free to subscribe to the channel, as well as leaving this video a like and comment, because I do read the majority of them. I like reading your comments. I don't know why people don't believe me. Sometimes I actually even respond to your comments from my little alt account, which is Sydney Lots of Music. People are like, is this really you? Yes, it's really me. But Telegram channels that apparently respond to, not Telegram channels, and people who pretended to be me who tell you to go to Telegram channels, that's not me. I don't ask you for money or anything like that. On that note though, as I always say, I hope you stay safe and well and make lots of good choices, kids. And I will see your wonderful little schmool faces in the next video.
I'll bet you a pot of gold that when I say Celtic folklore, your first thought is of a tiny little guy in green guarding his pot of gold at the end of a rainbow. But that, lads, is all propaganda. Stereotypes that those bastards at Hallmark and General Mills exploited for monetary gain. The true purpose of Celtic folktales was not to entertain you with magic and fairy dust. They were warnings that taught you how to survive, with magic and fairy dust sprinkled in. Don't linger near still water, don't wander after sunset, don't thank the fair folk, don't trust a hoe, and if your perfectly healthy child suddenly isn't acting like themselves, it's not just a phase, Mom. In fact, it may not even be your child. So in honor of St. Patrick's Day being right around the corner, I'm diving into the messed up origins of the Emerald Isle's most famous and feared creatures, as well as shining a light on the very real events and phenomena that led to their creation. And there is no better place to start than with the Guardians of Gold, leprechauns. I would have to imagine that if you're watching this video, you have at least a basic understanding of what leprechauns are, which is essentially the Irish people who have positive gold and rainbows and harass the humans they come into contact with. There's also a legend that says if you catch one, you either get some of their gold for yourself or 3 wishes. But sometimes you've got to do some convincing. Now personally, maybe you're with me on this, I've never really thought that much about leprechauns. They were just something I learned about as a kid and grew accustomed to seeing during St. Patty's celebrations and Lucky Charms commercials. I never questioned how straight up weird these guys are until recently. I got an invitation to a bar crawl that, like most things this month, ended up being canceled on account of the whole global pandemic thing. And there was a little leprechaun sitting in the top right corner of the page. And when I looked at it, I couldn't help but think, what the hell is that thing? So I did some digging. As it turns out, nobody really knows for sure. But there is some fascinating theories out there, as well as a ton of leprechaun lore that I'd never heard of. The fact that there is more than one kind of leprechaun, and their appearance depends on where in Ireland you find them. Some interesting shit, right? And I see no reason to put it off any longer. So ladies and gentlemen, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. These are the messed up origins of the leprechaun. So I think the first thing we need to establish before going too deep is what a leprechaun actually is. As mentioned before, there's a few basic details that everyone knows. Leprechauns are magic little men who like to play tricks on people and have a stash of gold hidden at the end of rainbows. But that's really just a caricature of what leprechauns truly are, and that's dangerous, territorial creatures who don't want to be messed with. Now let's start from the top with a common misconception. According to my math, in roughly 98.7% of scenarios, leprechauns are shown wearing green, but in actuality, they wore red, at least most of the time. According to William Butler Yeats, an Irish poet who's considered a pillar of the Irish literary establishment, that's because leprechauns are solitary fairies, and solitary fairies wear red, while fairies that live in groups wear green. And depending on what part of Ireland a leprechaun hails from, he could be wearing a number of different outfits, or even be called something entirely different. The following information comes from an Irish author named David Russell McAnally. And the only reason I'm restraining myself from making jokes about that is because I have a feeling I'm pronouncing it wrong. He describes 4 variations of the leprechaun. The lowryman is found in the northern counties of Ireland. He wears a red coat and white pants that resemble the outfits worn by British infantry, as well as a broad-brimmed, high-pointed hat. The Lorigadon lurks in Tipperary. He also sports a red jacket, but wears a jockey cap as well, and has a sword that he uses as a magic wand. The Luricon can be found in Kerry. He's described as a fat little fella whose face is about as red as his jacket, which has 7 rows, but though it's never actually buttoned. He either wears a helmet that's several sizes too big for him, or ties a handkerchief around his head. In Monaghan resides the Cluricaun, who wears a fancy red dress coat with a green vest underneath, as well as white pants, black stockings, and shiny black shoes. His hat is a long comb without a brim that usually sits crooked on his head of curly hair. So as you can see, the biggest differences seem to be these styles of coats and hats they wear. When it comes to their personalities, leprechauns are pretty consistent. With the exception of the Cluricaun, which is also known for getting drunk in taverns, they all seem to prefer being alone and spend their time either making or mending shoes. An interesting fact I found is that the Oxford Dictionary actually lists the phrase leaf brogan, which means shoemaker, as a possible origin of the word leprechaun. Another possibility is leukerpan, which means small body. If you're wondering why they spend all the time alone, there's a pretty funny explanation for it. Some say the leprechaun is actually an old bachelor elf who somehow fended off his mother's attempts to marry him to a pretty young thing and was exiled willingly as a result of refusing to conform. What we can get from that is that leprechauns might be a subsect of a broader species that actually does have a society of its own. But more on that later. But first, I've got to tell you about this week's sponsor, Squarespace. I want to warn you that you are missing out on some serious potential by not having your own website. Fortunately, our sponsor, Squarespace, can help. Because if you're serious about building something, then you need a website that feels professional and actually reflects you. Social platforms all start to look the same after a while, but with Squarespace, you can tweak and customize your site until it fits your brand perfectly. and it doesn't take a degree to do it. I've been raving about their fluid engine for years and how it lets you drag and drop elements exactly where you want them instead of having to rely on coding in the proper places. But now, the process is even easier with design intelligence. Their AI just needs a few simple prompts like what your business is and what's your aesthetic, and it'll generate a fully fledged site with every feature you need, whether that's a gallery for your art, a place to share your music, or a booking calendar so clients can schedule appointments. Squarespace keeps it simple and stress-free, which is exactly why I use them for messeduporigins.com. If you want to try it yourself, head to squarespace.com/JohnSolo or click the link in the description to start a free trial. And when you see what the hype's about, use code JohnSolo at checkout to get 10% off. Now, as you might expect from ancient creatures who spend their entire lives alone, leprechauns can be very territorial. Most of the time, their homes have hidden entrances by caves, rabbit holes, hollowed-out tree trunks, essentially things that you aren't likely to notice, and even if you did, you wouldn't think too much of it. But if you do happen to notice and get curious, you better watch yourself, because leprechauns are not going to ask questions. They'll either attack you right on the spot, or take note of who you are and proceed to make your life hell. They'll steal food, turn up the heat on the stove so your pots boil over, throw furniture, throw your baby. Let me say that one more time. They will throw your baby without even asking permission. Like, how rude is that? Ask. Ask before you throw my baby. And even worse than that, if you really piss them off, they'll go as far as to kidnap your baby and replace them with a fairy look-alike called a changeling. You might remember me mentioning changelings in my episode about the girl without hands. Oh, and by the way, if you ever catch your dog sitting around all dirty and exhausted, it's probably because a leprechaun took him out for a spin. They tend to do that with dogs, goats, and sheep. That might also be why Gunther looks like this right now. Another interesting fact I learned is that leprechauns hate schools, possibly because educated folks like professors and headmasters refuse to believe in them. You might think that means leprechauns are terrorizing schools all over Ireland to convince the faculty of their existence, but it's surprisingly the exact opposite. They avoid them. Whenever a new school is established in town, all the leprechauns leave. So at this point, you might be thinking that leprechauns sound like pretty annoying creatures, and you would be right about that. But as I mentioned earlier, catching one can result in a hefty reward. Experts say the best way of doing this is to go to isolated areas around Ireland and listen for the sound of them making shoes, because when they're focused, it's more likely that you can sneak up on them. If you manage to get within arm's reach, you can either catch them in a net or put them in a chokehold. It's totally up to you, and the little weirdo will offer you a variety of sweet prizes in exchange for his freedom. You could get some wishes, his pot of gold, or take from his personal stash that he has on him. You need to be careful though, because even at his most vulnerable, a leprechaun is cunning and will try to find a way to escape. This might entail physically assaulting you or distracting you with a magic pouch that contains a charmed coin that always appears back inside it, so while you're busy counting your loot, he can escape. And to those wondering why leprechauns even have pots of gold in the first place, those are supposedly from wartime. Legend says the Danes, who once conquered Ireland, buried pots of gold around the country and entrusted them to leprechauns for safekeeping. Now that basically covers all the major aspects of leprechaun lore, but this wouldn't be Messed Up Origins unless we took a look at where the little buggers actually came from. So, let's jump into that next. So as I mentioned earlier, no one really knows where the concept of leprechauns came from. And for me personally, that's not too surprising. I've covered almost 100 stories at this point, and they've included a huge variety of fantastic creatures. Witches, goblins, trolls, centaurs, you name it, and we don't know what inspired the vast majority of them. However, that hasn't stopped experts from taking a crack at it. One of the leading theories is that leprechauns are part of the, I believe it's pronounced Eastshee family of fairies that exist within Irish mythology. I do want to make clear that leprechauns themselves don't appear in any of the ancient Irish myths, and instead were introduced through folktales, but in this case, the folktales borrowed from the universe that was created through the myths, so in that way, they're connected. It's kind of like if someone in 1500s Greece thought up a new species that was somehow a descendant of the Olympians that were worshipped thousands of years prior. It wouldn't be part of the original Greek mythos, but it would have its roots in it. Does that make sense? Now, the Eastshee are said to be either the ancestors of humans, the spirits of nature, or gods and goddesses. They're also referred to as the later literary versions of Tuatha De Danann, aka the tribe of the gods, aka the main deities of Ireland before the country adopted Christianity. The belief was that the Eastshee lived in a secret society, either deep underground or in a parallel dimension where they could walk among the humans without being seen. Kind of like how they do it in the Beyond This Earthly Realm episode. Also, people generally feared the Eastshee and made sacrifices to them on a regular basis to stay on their good side. They even avoided calling them by name, either opting for the good neighbors or the fair folk. So the Eastshee were living large for a while, but legend says when the new religions moved in, began to convert, they lost their powers, shrunk down, and became leprechauns. What a bummer that would be, huh? To go from a god or goddess to a leprechaun. I honestly don't blame them for spending so much time harassing humans anymore. It's pretty much all our fault they lost their ethereal cloud.
Chips under your hand, Captain.
If you were to look up the first time the word leprechaun, or a form of it, was used in a story, you would be pointed to a play written by Thomas Dekker in 1604 called The New Horror. Part 2. The word is only said once, and the line goes as follows. As for your Irish lubricant, that spirit whom by preposterous charms thy lust hath raised, in wrong circle. No, I don't know what it means either, but I do dig the name of the play. Now, if you were to ask what the first story that leprechauns appeared in was, you would be told Fergus MacLetty, or in English, that's Adventure of Fergus, son of Letty, which is thought to be written back in the 8th century and is very weird. It opens with the conclusion of a great war, and our hero, King Fergus, has returned to his homeland of Ulster. Now that he's finally done with those pesky battles and chopping off his enemies' heads, the king wants to relax, takes the slave girl from the beach, but they both fall asleep on the shore. But sometime later, Fergus wakes up to find himself being pulled into the ocean by 3 magic dwarves, who aren't specifically called leprechauns, but embody all of their traits. As soon as his feet touched the water, Fergus jumped up and caught hold of all 3 little men, and their leader said he'd grant them a wish if he let them go. So the king agreed and wished for a charm that would let him breathe underwater. The leprechaun leader said he would grant his wish, but under the condition that he would never go into Dundrum Bay. Fergus agreed to this and was then given either some magic herbs to put in his ears or a cloak to wrap around his head, depending on the version. And then, in a truly bizarre twist, the leprechaun started to suck on the king's breasts. Seriously, he did that. And it even weirded out the king, who was like, "Why are you doing that?" And the leprechaun replied that it was how his people asked for pity. Not gonna lie, I don't think it gets more pitiful than a grown man voluntarily sucking on another man's peck so he doesn't kill him. That's bottom feedership right there. Anyway, the rest of the story actually doesn't involve the leprechauns at all, so I'll give you the too long didn't read version. Essentially, what happens is the king goes into the bay that he promised he wouldn't and discovers a horrible monster there called the Mudras, a mysterious, undefined horror that has the appearance of the thorn bush, stings at the touch, and inflates and deflates as it breathes. Simply laying eyes on this monster can kill you, but Fergus gets off kinda lucky. His mouth just twists to the back of his head. Hey, I said kinda lucky. Now obviously this is a horrible deformity, but somehow Fergus's servants keep it a secret from him for 7 whole years. It wasn't until a slave girl that Fergus whipped got angry and insulted him for it that he realized something was wrong. And by the way, that slave, he cut her in half. Thought you should know that. Next, Fergus returns to Dundrum Bay to take his revenge on the monster, and after an entire day of battling, which left the bay dyed red with blood, he returned to the shore with its head in his hands, declared himself the victor, and then died immediately after. Quite the dramatic ending for a story that features a magical little person trying to breastfeed from another man, wouldn't you think? But it's nowhere near as dramatic as our next subject, the notorious Banshee. Now, if you're anything like me, all of your experience with and knowledge of Banshees comes from playing Halo. Outside of that, you may have heard or even used the term screamed like a Banshee without fully understanding its meaning, but getting the gist that whatever sound Banshees make is almost as hard
prophetic
to listen to as
ghost.
Debbie Hanna's music.
It usually appears to let you know somebody's going to die soon. It's a wailing spirit.
Into the moonlight, but it turns out I'm about 2/3 wrong. Banshees aren't murderous spirits come back to haunt the living with their miserable crying. Rather, they're supposed to help us. And today, we're going to talk about how. So contrary to the commonly held belief of the modern day, banshees are not some kind of she-demon who drag their victims to early graves. Believe it or not, despite commonly being referred to as spirits or ghosts nowadays, traditionally they were categorized as fairies, and their name originally meant fairy woman, though they were still heavily associated with death. According to tradition, banshees were female fairies that foretold the death of a family member, or in some instances delivered the news that a family member had just died by wailing, crying, or shrieking, and only those related to the deceased could hear them. Now to clarify, she doesn't kill said family member, nor does hearing her cry mean that you are going to die next. She's basically a mythical messenger who doesn't want you to have to wait for the obituaries to come out to know that your great Aunt Tessie died. But not everyone in Ireland was so lucky to get a heads up about their relative's death. You had to be able to trace your lineage back to the Milesians, the oldest ancestors of the present-day Irish, which means banshees only looked out for those whose last names started with O or Micmac, with a few exceptions. And while they're mostly auditory creatures, throughout the centuries, there's been a number of different descriptions of what banshees actually look like. In Catherine Briggs's 1976 Encyclopedia of Fairies, she claims it has long streaming hair, wears a gray cloak over a green dress, and her eyes are red from continual weeping. Right, I'm sure that's what it's from. Weeping. With a P. Back in the 1600s, English writer Anne Franshaw claimed to see a banshee firsthand and said it was dressed in white with red hair and a ghastly complexion, while other accounts describe something a bit more ominous. A shrouded woman crouched beneath the trees, lamenting with a veiled face. There's also been some disagreement over the size of the banshee, with descriptions varying depending on which region of Ireland you ask in. Some claim she's unnaturally tall like Slender Man, but the majority of tales describe her as being between 1 and 4 feet high. Some experts believe this short stature could be a reflection of her old age, even though she can appear as an old or young woman, but others theorize it's to emphasize her status as a fairy. Then again, depending on who you ask, the banshee might not be a fairy at all. Starting in the late 1800s, she began to take a much more ghostly, dare I say spoopy form, with the stories about her sounding a lot more, for lack of a better term, generic. Now, I don't want it to come across like I'm hating on the culture, far from it, but that's honestly how it comes off to me. In my opinion, her being a fairy is a lot more enigmatic and interesting. It's like fairies are magical creatures and you can never tell what they're capable of. Meanwhile, ghosts are just predictable. And before you get mad, let me explain. Those who believe banshees are the spirits of the dead typically say they come in 2 different forms depending on who they were in life. When a young and innocent member of the family passed away, whether it be from illness, violence, or tragedy, she'd return as a banshee, and if she liked her family, she would come back in the form of a beautiful young spirit who, instead of wailing her warning, would sing it. However, if the banshee in question hated her family in life, she'd return as an old, disfigured apparition that would howl her warnings with a tone of excitement that someone she despised was going to die soon. And while I certainly find these distinctions to be pretty cool, they just sound like exactly what I'd expect. I mean, how many famous ghost stories do you know with nearly identical setups? Granted, I can't really fault this interpretation with being unoriginal when it started to surface over 120 years ago at least. I just prefer the fairy explanation because to me, it's so much more unique. For those who don't know, the modern-day fairies of Ireland were once believed to be gods known as Tuatha De Danann that went and disappeared underground after the arrival of the Milesians, and over the centuries, the public's imagination evolved the gods into fairies. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that banshees were gods at one point, but they existed on the same mythical level, similar to the sea nymphs or muses in Greek mythology. That being said, it doesn't sound like they made nearly as good a music. So now that you've got the scoop on what banshees are, let's talk a little bit about their history, because it's pretty damn interesting. Unfortunately, it's impossible to say exactly how long people have believed in them, but the earliest written mention of banshees can be traced back to the publication of Sean McCraith's Triumphs of Torlau back in 1380. The book depicts the wars between the Irish O'Brien family and the English De Clares for the Thomond region of Ireland, and for some reason, O'Brien is spelled like this. You wonder why I'm starting slow and steady with our Celtic series? Names like that are exactly why. Anyway, there are 3 specific banshees described in the text. One of them is Beautiful, which rarely fits descriptions of banshees in later centuries, and the other 2 are Ugly as Full. The ugly ones are also said to be surrounded by mutilated bodies and worn armies that are marching towards battle and their doom, but the commanders pretty much always ignore them and journey on toward their own destruction. Mentions of the fairies can also be found in Norman literature from that time, the Normans being the people who were born from Norse Viking settlers coming into contact with the French. Outside of these 2 sources, though, they aren't written about again until around 300 years later in the memoirs of Lady Franshaw that we mentioned earlier. That was transcribed sometime in the late 1600s. Now, it's definitely possible they were written about prior to that and the texts were just lost or destroyed over time, but like the majority of folklore, we can assume this legend was mostly passed on through the art of oral storytelling. But even still, you've got to wonder where the idea idea of banshees comes from, right? I mean, a fairy that wails to warn you about the death of a family member is a pretty specific concept. While experts believe it may have been inspired by a pretty specific tradition that took place during Irish, Scottish, and Welsh funerals. That tradition was known as keening, and entailed a woman who would sing sad songs, cry, and wail very loudly over the deceased's body, essentially channeling the sadness of the entire community through her vocals for days on end. It might sound weird, but for a long time it was the standard way for the dead person's family and loved ones to release grief. I don't know if it was something about seeing a person act out what you're feeling deep down, or maybe it just helped you feel like you weren't alone in your misery, but there was something oddly therapeutic about having a keener there, and the best ones even received payment for their services. Unfortunately, the practice was completely phased out before the 1960s by the Catholic Church, who considered it a little too pagan for their liking, but we have managed to preserve some recordings of one of the last living professional keeners from back in the day, named Bridget. Now, to those wondering how exactly all this connects with banshees, the belief back then was that the better the keener was, the more important the person was born. So when the most important people died, like the Aristophats and other family members, they had the best keeners at the funeral. In fact, they were so good that common folk thought them to be fairy women and referred to them as banshees, which slowly morphed into banshees. But John, didn't you say earlier that banshees were decrepit, scary-looking old women? If keeners were highly sought-after professionals, how did the reputation get mingled with these ominous heralds of death? Well, I'm sad to say that most keeners lived pretty depressing lives, and while gifted in the craft, many of them were paid in alcohol, which led to them becoming alcoholic old women who were banished from their villages or forced to live on the outskirts of town. And what do you do when you're a depressed alcoholic exile, singing sad songs? You sing it, even if it's the middle of the night and the only person who hears you mistakes you for a mythical creature whose song is so sad it must be a sign of terrible things to come. And if you're not sold on this theory just yet, those two other countries where keening is a common practice have their own versions of the banshee. In Scottish folklore, there's a similar creature known as the Little Washerwoman, who's said to be seen washing the blood-stained clothes or armor of those who are about to die. And in Welsh folklore, they have the Cathal Wraith, which doesn't have a physical form, but is rather a disembodied voice that wails and moans to signal a person's death. So as ominous and intimidating as the banshee can be, she's not actually all that dangerous. The same cannot be said for the Lianixi. Have you ever wondered where great artists like Leonardo da Vinci and Beethoven got the inspiration for their most celebrated works? How they created these masterpieces that resonated with so many of our species? Since the days of the ancient Greeks, artists have attributed their inspiration, at least in part, to the Muses, goddesses of the arts who deliver new ideas and grant access to deeper levels of human insight, providing insight and wisdom that sparks the generation of new and creative ideas. Now, depending on who you are, these muses may take different forms. If you were an ancient Greek, they'd be 9 daughters of Zeus and Nemesis, or if you're Taylor Swift, they'd be your 19 ex-boyfriends. Those from the Emerald Isle have more dangerous muse to look out for, though. She's called the Lianixi, and the inspiration she provides is costly. A descendant of the Tuatha Dé Danann, the Celtic gods who were worshipped in Ireland before the arrival of Christianity demoted them to fairy status, she would be considered an Ishi. The Ishi were a fairy folk that were believed to live underground or in a parallel dimension that coexisted with our own. They were powerful territorial beings that the Celts took care not to anger, often referring to them in complimentary ways, such as the good neighbors or the fair folk. It didn't matter how nice you were to the Lianixi, though. Once you accepted her into your life, you were doomed. You see, the way the Lianixi operated is she would take the form of a beautiful young woman and give inspiration to a poet or musician by making him her lover. And through her love, she would share intelligence and creativity that allowed the artist to produce incredible works that were celebrated by his peers. His songs would be sung by bards in every tavern. His art hung in the halls and homes of kings, queens, and heroes. But ultimately, after getting the success and recognition he wished for his entire life, the Lianixi would leave him, and so would the inspiration she provided. The artist would be left alone with the same sad skills
should be an
that he
island,
struggled to break
like
out
here.
before the evil fairy had come along and now, a shell of the great creator that he once was, he would die of depression. It was only after his death that the Lian-Shih would return to drag his body to her lair in the parallel dimension. There, she would drain his blood.
There's a shore right there, I think.
And storing the rest in a black cauldron, the true source of the artistic inspiration she offered. There is one way to escape her clutches, though. W.B. Yeats,
No, that's
an Irish
the line.
poet who wrote extensively about Celtic folklore, said that if the would-be victim refuses her initial offer, then she'll be forced to become his slave. You're gonna notice that deception and lies are a recurring theme with Celtic creatures, and the Kelpie is a major culprit. The Kelpie appears in several stories across the many countries that contribute to Celtic folklore, but traditionally it is associated with Scottish folklore and mythology. So on second thought, maybe I should have skipped this one. The Kelpie is a shape-shifting aquatic
there's
spirit
one.
commonly found in
Little
Scottish
off.
legends. It can take many forms, including that of a human, but usually appears as a horse and roams around Scotland, perpetually dripping with water. Kelpies like to lure their victims in by appearing playful and friendly, like James Baxter in Adventure Time, except he actually spreads joy with his talents. With the Kelpie, it's all an act. As soon as the victim lets their guard down and climbs onto the horse's back, they'll be physically and magically bound to it so they can't dismount. The Kelpie will then run directly into the nearest body of water, usually a lake, and drown its victim. And when the deed is done, it'll carry the dead lad or lass to its lair and eat them. The Kelpie wasn't picky either. It pursued men, lured in women. There's even a story about it trapping 9 children on its back and successfully drowning all of them. It was close to having 10 children. The last one didn't get directly on the Kelpie, he just stroked its nose, so when he realized he was stuck, he cut his finger off to free himself and ran away. Just like with the Lian-Shih, though, there is a narrow window to escape, one that doesn't involve dismembering yourself. If you have the sense about you to grab hold of the Kelpie's bridle, that headgear that horses wear, you can take control of the beast, and from there, have command over every other Kelpie. Not a bad superpower to have, if you ask me, but if you don't think it's worth the risk of physically getting it on the Kelpie, the good news is that as long as you don't touch it, it'll eventually see you're not going to fall for its tricks and might even leave you alone to find an easier meal. There's a story from northern Scotland about a farmer who is being harassed by a Kelpie that won't stop breaking into his grain mill and tearing up the place. And he finally gets it to f*** off when he puts one of his boars in there to fight it. The night after their first brawl, the Kelpie literally sticks his head through the farmer's bedroom window and says, "Boy, are you going to keep the pig in there, or is that a temporary situation?" And when the farmer says it's for the long term, the Kelpie leaves and never returns. A pretty interesting creature who wants to make trouble and kill people, but as the stories indicate, not in a way that requires a lot of effort, or at the very least, risks putting itself in danger. Unfortunately for the Celts, though, the last monstrosity on our list was a lot more murderous and nowhere near as lazy. Queer Hanukkah.
Alright, I'm getting tired. I'm gonna log out. I will talk to you guys in the morning.
Celtic folklore, which makes her obscurity all the more surprising. Also called the Celtic fire spitter and believed by some to be the mother of the devil himself, Queer Hanukkah was the name of an old witch that appeared to be part humanoid, part demon, and part serpent. Whenever she'd emerge from her watery, swamp-like abode, she would wreak havoc on the local population, murdering travelers, burning down homes with families trapped inside,